government founded on injustice and inequality. That our country will never be prosperous or free until all our people live in brotherhood, enjoying equal rights and opportunities. That only a democratic state, based on the will of all the people, can secure to all their birthright without distinction of color, race, sex, or belief. And therefore, we the people of South Africa, black and white, together equals, countrymen and brothers, adopt this Freedom Charter. And we pledge ourselves to strive together, sparing neither strength nor courage until the democratic changes here set out have been won. And ending it off at the end of that charter with these words: these freedoms we will fight for, side by side, throughout our lives, until we have won our liberty. And then in that day, in that moment of the adoption of the Freedom Charter on this day, 70 years ago, the words of Helen Joseph capturing what had happened, because it was all taking place in Kliptown amid a heavy police presence, because at that time, that was the context politically. And this is what Helen Joseph said about it. The police have seized thousands of copies of draft charter, but they could not touch the charter itself. Its ideas and message were now enshrined in the hearts and minds of the delegates, who would carry it far and wide to the people of South Africa for them to make their own. And the journalist and dissident at the time, Robert Risher, capturing it this way, the site where they were in Kliptown, saying, "This ground on which we are standing here today is holy, friends. This shall be the monument of the people of South Africa." So I thought I would frame it that way this morning and not really try and cloud the agenda by outlining any other stories, because so significant is the moment, and it's a moment for us to reflect about the journey that has been traversed over the last 70 years. So at the top of 7, we'll have 2 reflective conversations on the 70-year march from the adoption of the Freedom Charter to democratic South Africa. Pitika Ntuli, poet, artist, and academic, will be the first to weigh in, but also Mondle Makanya, the veteran journalist and editor. He penned a piece recently on City Press, just reflecting on the journey of the Freedom Charter, as well as what it signifies for democratic South Africa and what we can do with it. Now that we have the Freedom Charter and many of the promises of the Freedom Charter, what are we going to do with them? But I'd also like your own reflections on the totality of the Freedom Charter, from its promises of the democratic basis for governance, from political to civil rights and individual liberties, and the just and equal society that it envisaged. Many of those promises were baked into our Constitution when it was penned all those years ago, and you can see the evidence of that in the everyday conduct of our democracy. But what's your overall assessment of the achievement of the entirety of the document's promises, especially those that have to do with the fundamental transformation of the economy and its ownership? Specifically, you will see clauses such as this one: the people shall share in the country's wealth, and its sub-clauses that will come under the spotlight. They promise, among others, the national wealth of our country, the heritage of South Africans shall be restored to the people, the mineral wealth beneath the soil, the banks and monopoly industry shall be transferred to the ownership of the people as a whole. All other industry and trade shall be controlled to assist the well-being of the people. How far have we gone on that journey? Do we necessarily want to follow that path as laid out exactly, or have we pursued other paths that have the same effect of pursuing and perhaps achieving to varying degrees that fundamental transformation? I thought I'd frame the conversation that way and not really give the other stories that we will cover. You will find out as we go along. So the full bench then of the morning brief team is ready, able and willing to serve you with your essential updates throughout the morning. And Musa stands at the ready with your hourly and half-hourly news updates. Rob Byrne confirms he has your traffic updates. Zaikan confirms your sport. Melissa Puta has your morning brief in brief. Ndauleng Lechela, as always, with your business and market updates, and Sipho Mantula with your Africa update at around 6:40. Give me a call, weigh in on this and any other conversations. The number to dial is 086 000 2032. Your WhatsApp voice notes on 061 410 4107. Let's get the Thursday edition of the Morning Brief underway.
Every murder has a moment when it could have been stopped. Countdown to Murder takes you inside the chilling timeline from ordinary days to unthinkable crimes. Real stories, real people, and the final hours before everything fell apart. Countdown to Murder. Every second tells a story. Thursdays at 9 p.m. only on S3. Open up. S3.
Big stories of the day. Hashtag the morning brief.
So let's start this morning's briefing session with your update from Melissa Puta with the morning brief in brief. And among the stories that Melissa will be covering is that extraordinary story playing itself out between the government of Zambia and the family of the late former president Edgar Lungu, right? So some interesting developments coming through from there, but also then we'll be hearing about what the Gauteng Premier, Panyaza Lesufi, has been doing around issues of governance, particularly some changes that are being made in terms of the administrative leadership of some of the departments in the province. But let's start with Melissa with that story out of the Gauteng Provincial Division of the High Court in Pretoria. Melissa, this story is turning into an ugly spectacle between the family of the late Edgar Lungu and the government of Zambia. Tell us what happened yesterday.
Morning, Thulasizwe. The North Gauteng High Court in Pretoria has unexpectedly halted the burial of former Zambian President Edgar Lungu moments before a private ceremony in South Africa took place. Lungu, who died on June 5th, 2025, at the age of 68, has been at the center of a dispute between his family and the Zambian government over funeral and burial arrangements. The family, feeling excluded from the process, planned a South African burial while the government insisted on a full control and attempted to repatriate his body without family consent. The court has postponed the funeral with proceedings scheduled for August 4th, 2025. In the meantime, the family is allowed to visit Lungu's body at the mortuary. So this is one that we will watch closely.
Yeah. And Panyaza Lesufi rings in the changes in as far as the administrative leadership of some departments is concerned. And this all has to do with lifestyle audits that these officials failed.
Yes. So Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi confirmed that several senior provincial officials failed lifestyle audits, with 3 out of 4 outstanding heads of departments flagged as high risk and removed from their roles, though not dismissed. These officials may be reassigned due to conflicts of interest. Lesufi highlighted the importance of accountability, revealing that 47 forensic reports uncovered fraud, corruption, and misuse of resources, leading to 88 disciplinary actions, 55 criminal cases, and the recovery of 2 million rand in lost funds. Meanwhile, Ewan Botha of the Patriotic Alliance, was sworn in as the new Gauteng MEC for Environment following Shayla Peters' resignation. And all this happened yesterday during a briefing by the Premier.
What's that they say, Melissa, about a fish rotting from the head? If the head of department, the head of the administration, doesn't pass a lifestyle audit, what is to happen with the DDGs and the directors and everyone else beneath that? It's just extraordinary, that story. Lastly, tell me about the search and recovery operations in Mthatha. You're saying they were suspended for a day.
Yes, so the search and rescue operations in the flood-stricken Mthatha were suspended for a day and will resume today under harsh weather conditions, including expected snow and rain. No new bodies were found on Wednesday, and no further missing people have been reported. Rescue teams from the police, disaster management, and Gift of the Givers covered treacherous terrain along the Mthatha River. As temperatures drop and the weather worsens, authorities remain on high alert, and crews acknowledge that time is running out to locate more victims. So it is a sad and hard condition in Mthatha, but operations are continuing regardless.
All right, Melissa, thank you for that. That's Melissa Puta there with your morning brief in brief. I'd want to hear your own reflections about what Melissa was telling us about these heads of department that failed. 3 out of 4 heads of department flagged as high risk and removed from their roles, though not dismissed at this point because they didn't pass the lifestyle audits. These are the people who are meant to lead the administration and show and lead by example. I don't know what to make of this.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
So your weather is quite extensive and there's quite a number of warnings. And as always, we will prioritize the warnings and then I'll give you the temperatures for the main centers around the country. So let's start. The first one is a yellow level 4 warning. It says damaging waves resulting in damage to coastal infrastructure and disruption to beachfront activities. That is expected along the coast between Alexander Bay and Plettenberg Bay. Yellow level 2 warning. It says damaging coastal winds resulting in localized disruption of small harbors and or ports for a short period of time. Small vessels at risk of taking on water and capsizing in locality and difficulty in navigation. Those conditions expected between Port Edward and Cape Vidal as well as between Cape Agulhas and East London. Then a yellow level 2 warning. It says damaging waves resulting in damage to coastal infrastructure and disruption to beachfront activities. That is expected along the coast between Plettenberg Bay and East London. A yellow level 2 warning. It says damaging interior winds leading to localized problems for high-sized vehicles on prone routes and some transport services expected over the Free State, the southeastern parts of the Northern Cape and northwestern parts of KwaZulu-Natal, as well as along the coast and adjacent interior of the Eastern Cape between Plettenberg Bay and East London. A yellow level 2 warning, disruptive rainfall leading to localized flooding of susceptible formal and informal settlements or roads and low-lying areas over Cedarburg, City of Cape Town, Cape Winelands and the western parts of the Overberg district that is in the Western Cape, and that is expected this morning. And then lastly, you have a yellow level 1 warning. It says disruptive snow resulting in traffic disruption due to icy conditions, isolated loss of vulnerable livestock and crops, and that is expected over Senqu and Elundini local municipalities in the Eastern Cape. Your highs and lows for the main centers: Pretoria 8 to 21, Johannesburg 5 to 20, Mbombela 8 to 26, Polokwane 4 to 24, Mahikeng 6 to 17, Bloemfontein 8 to 13, Kimberley 9 to 12, Uppington 6 to 10, Cape Town 11 to 13, George 11 to 14, Gqeberha 11 to 19, East London 16 to 21, Durban 17 to 29, Richards Bay 16 to 30, and finally Pietermaritzburg 9 to 25.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
In the days since the U.S. bombed 3 of Iran's key nuclear sites, Fordow, Esfahan and Natanz, debate has raged over the extent of the damage and disruption of the program caused by the dropping of the powerful bunker-busting bombs. Over the past few days, U.S. President Donald Trump insisting on playing up the extent of the destruction of especially the Fordow site, saying Iran's nuclear program had been obliterated and calling the strike a bullseye hit on the target. But then the Pentagon's own assessment was leaked, and it says Iran's nuclear program had been set back by only a few months. By yesterday, Trump was now saying the intelligence over the effectiveness of the bombing is, quote-unquote, very inconclusive. So what are we to make of all of this? Let's bring in Brooks Spector, international relations expert to weigh in on it. Brooks, what are we to make of this seeming confusion about the extent of the damage, or is what's important what Iran is highlighting, that we are all focusing on the wrong thing here, the extent of the damage and disruption, where the focus should be on what Iran is calling an act of aggression by the United States?
Well, good morning. Actually, there are a couple of things that we need to focus on. One is as you point out, the disagreement over the extent of the damage. The first Pentagon, the Defense Intelligence Agency leaked report, it wasn't officially released, said the damage was rather less significant than than a number of other organizations internationally have said. But two, I think what we need to focus on even more than the sort of routine automatic response from the Iranians is what happens going forward. That is to say, will the Iranians, after all, begin to reconstitute a nuclear program? And if they do, is it headed toward the creation of a nuclear device or a bomb? And three, have they been deterred from trying to do that for the next umpteen months, years, whatever, as a result of the damage that was that they already incurred? I think at this point you have three different combatants: the Israelis, the Iranians, and the Americans, all claiming success. And I think the best way to evaluate it is to what happened to the ceasefire that was agreed, and where things move beyond where we are now. That's what I'm looking at in any case.
How likely are we to see a realization of the fear that Iran, as a result of this bombing, may actually decrease its cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency? I saw the foreign ministry spokesperson speaking to Al Jazeera and making exactly that point, that that country's parliament has voted that actually what's the point of cooperating? We may as well just stop cooperating with the IAEA.
Well, I mean, if their program has been decimated or obliterated, if you want Donald Trump's usage, then there really isn't much point in cooperating because there's not much of a program to cooperate over. That's one version of things. If that's a kind of a threat to allow the Iranians to begin to reconstitute their program, that's a whole different thing. One of the things I think we still have to wait for, of course, is the evaluations from all the other intelligence units in the United States. There are 18 different organizations, various government departments that focus on very different aspects of information gathering, and they have yet to step forward. They have yet to offer their analyses, and they probably haven't even completed what it is they need to know. Part of the challenge, of course, is that so much of that analysis is going to be done remotely. In other words, the CIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, the intelligence unit in the Department of Energy, and so forth, they're unlikely to actually have people on the ground walking around with Geiger counters in Iran, finding out with shovels and such, finding out exactly what happened at the three facilities in question. So a lot of it's going to be secondhand intelligence and analysis of signals, communication, what's written, what's purloined, what's estimated, what's sensed by remote sensing satellites. It's going to be a while before we actually have a real consensus on this between the Israeli sources, the International Atomic Energy Agency, the American government officials, and others.
All right. Brooks, thank you for your time once again. That's Brooks Spector, International Relations Expert.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
A very good morning. We'll kick off with the Mamelodi Sundowns. They've been eliminated from the FIFA Club World Cup after a goalless draw against Brazil's Fluminense in Miami. The South African champions needed a win to advance but finished third in their group. The campaign included a historic 1-0 victory over Ulsan HD and a gutsy 4-3 defeat to Borussia Dortmund. Now, despite bowing out, Sundowns earned global respect for their performance. Here's the Sundowns goalkeeper, Ronwen Williams, giving his assessment.
We've picked up that it's the efficiency. You know, the teams that we play, they don't need a lot of chances to hurt you. We saw today even the half chances that they got, they hit the pole. So they just wait for that moment to hurt you. And whereas us on the other side, we had so many chances throughout the tournament. And our efficiency, our conversion rate is probably not the best. But I'm just proud of the boys for the effort, for the fight, and the ability to play our own football.
and that means Fluminense have booked their spot in the last 16. They are second place in Group F behind Borussia Dortmund, who edged Ulsan HD 1-0. Inter Milan, they've advanced to the round of 16 with a 2-0 win over River Plate. Closer to home, Albert College sealed their promotion to the Betway Premiership, condemning Cape Town City to relegation following a 1-0 victory at Olympia Park Stadium in Rustenburg. The result sealed a dreadful campaign for the Citizens, who ended the league season in 15th position, and they'll now play in the Motsepe Foundation Championship. Tennis action: Emma Raducanu succumbed to defeat by teenager Maya Joint in a second-round match at Eastbourne. The 22-year-old Raducanu lost 4-6, 6-1, 7-6 to the Australian 19-year-old. Earlier, the defending Wimbledon champion Barbara Krejcikova saved match points against Jodie Burrage to the second round, and it was 6-4, 4-6, 7-6 was her win. That's a wrap. We'll have more sport top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Good morning, I'm Anne Musa. In the headlines, as the United Nations marks 80 years of existence, the UN G20 Sherpa Nelson Mufu says the G20 is making meaningful strides to ensure multilateralism remains effective and inclusive, particularly for global trade and cooperation amid rising geopolitical tensions. The latest report by Banks of Africa shows take-home pay declined for the third consecutive month in the month of May. The nominal average take-home pay dropped by 1.3% to reach 17,296 rand in May compared to April. And the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has held a new agreement to set up a special tribunal on Russia's invasion of Ukraine, saying there must be real steps to make it work and hold everyone responsible to account. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Top story is the closure of Pretoria's N1 South at Stormful to recover a truck that lost its load and overturned. It's going to be a couple of hours of disruption on this one. And it is major. It is monster, if you like, in terms of delays. The real time there, N1 South coming through from Montana, 2 kilometres an hour down towards the Stormful Road, and current backlog, that'll take you 2 hours to get through it. So that's what we're dealing with this morning. Stay off the N1 South, either coming from Hammanskraal, coming down through Pumalani Plaza, coming in off the N4, the Bequeta Highway to link onto the N1, coming out of Montana, coming out of Baviansport. Just stay off the N1 highway because it's just not worth sitting there for that long. Plenty of alternative routes that are open and flowing through the area, with the exception of the major sort of alternatives. So Sefako Makato from Montana across the N1 bridge, which is a mess all the way down to Moloto Road, and then the Baviansport Road sort of looping around the N1 closure is pretty extreme as well. If you are Montana, I would suggest you just go the other way and go down through Vanderbilt Pass territory. Joburg looks fairly normal this morning. Got the first of the broken down trucks today coming out of Durban on your way to Pietermaritzburg. This one between Cliffdale and Hammersdale. So already quite a bit of queuing pressure through there. Cape Town, still some wet weather around, so you'll still need to be vigilant. The Borchards Quarry off-ramp on the N2 is closed. The N2's open, the off-ramp in Younger is shut, and that's just keeping a bit of traffic pressure on the N2 down towards the airport exit, which is the next off-ramp. Add a collision on the M1 into town at the N7 highway exit, and that's pushing a heavy queue back to Plattekloof Hill. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
For that, let's turn to Ndauling Lechela. Ndauling, let's start with news out of Tesla, and we're getting a sense of their performance in the EU region. Tell me what's happening in terms of the sales there.
Morning, Tula. So the EV maker continues to face challenges in Europe, with car sales plunging for the 5th consecutive month. In May, figures showing a 27.9% year-on-year decline to 13,863 units sold in the European Union, Britain, and the European Free Trade Association. Now, this downturn has reduced Tesla's European market share from 1.8% to 1.2% over the past year. The group has pointed to increased competition, particularly from Chinese car makers. Elon Musk's political activities have also sparked protests at Tesla's dealerships across Europe, potentially deterring customers. And some analysts are saying Tesla is losing popularity as other brands grow. Meanwhile, Chinese automakers continue to thrive in that market, the European market that is, selling 65,808 units in May and doubling their market share to 5.9%. Their success can be attributed to strategic decisions to promote alternative powertrains like plug-in hybrids and full hybrids.
And then let's talk about what I maintain is your favorite company. Tell me about NVIDIA. And in fact, I think you'll tell me the story with a bit of glee. Yeah?
That's right, Thulas. I don't know if it's my favorite company. It's just my favorite company to look at. The growth trajectory is quite interesting. So the stock surged to a record high in yesterday's session, reclaiming its title as the world's most valuable company with a market value of $3.76 trillion. Now, the chip maker's shares rose over 4% to $154.10, driven by optimism about artificial intelligence growth. According to Loop Capital analyst Ananda Barua, the company is poised to ride a golden wave of AI adoption, prompting Barua to lift NVIDIA's price target to $250 and maintain a buy rating. And with a relatively modest price to earnings ratio of 30 times expected earnings, Barua added that NVIDIA's growth prospects look promising. Now, the U.S. stock market's renewed focus on AI has fueled significant gains in chip stocks and tech companies, with NVIDIA trading places with Microsoft and Apple as the world's most valuable company. This also fueled a rally in AI-exposed stocks in Asia today. We saw TSMC also making gains in today's session.
Lastly, Dowling, give us a recap of market activity from yesterday and how we're looking this morning.
And we just spoke about that rally in NVIDIA, that fueling an uptick in the tech-heavy NASDAQ amid choppy trade in the U.S. in yesterday's session. The tech-heavy index, the only index closing in the green, up 0.33%. Back at home, stocks mixed as optimism sparked by talks of a ceasefire in the Middle East somewhat fizzles out. The all share slipping 0.6%. The Financial 15 leading the losses, down 1.4%. Now, despite some nervousness in equity markets, currencies are still pushing through, with the rand trading firmer this morning at 17.70 to the dollar. Looking at Asian markets, stocks mostly in the green as traders are weighing geopolitical, economic, and fiscal uncertainties.
When you hear from Dowling, you know your money is on the move and your day has well and truly started. You'll be hearing more insights from her in the second hour of the show, just after 7:30.
Africa Update on SAFM.
For that, let's turn to Advocate Sipho Mantula. Raz, good morning. The story, man. The story is, it is one of those sad spectacles to watch playing itself out at this particular point. Difficult time for the family of the late former Zambian President Edgar Lungu, but you're seeing this dispute that's playing out between them and the Zambian government.
Refreshing morning, Thulas, and Jumbo Africa to the listeners. Indeed, Thulas, it is a long journey looking at that Edgar Lungu passed away on the 5th of June. And yesterday, on the 25th, 20 days later, we still have a court injunction that was brought by the government of Zambia, raising the issues, Thulas, of what is a national interest and the issues of unity, trying to say that they are now interdicting that private burial that was planned yesterday. And the court order coming out very clear to us that the matter will only be resolved on the 4th of August. So if it will take another month for both the government of Zambia and the family of Edgar Lungu to find each other to look at this issue. The family have said that it was his wish, the former President Lungu, that President Hakainde must not attend his funeral. The government has its own way when they filed these papers. It was agent papers that were sent to us coming from the Attorney General of Zambia, Mulilo Kabesha, who have to send it agently to say that there is still a way that the special envoy was sent by Cyril Ramaphosa, but Little Mulusi have tried. Now, where to from here? And that's where we are finding ourselves with the court order yesterday, urging both families to find each other, but the matter will only be heard on the 4th of August.
Sure, wow. So the spectre of him possibly being buried only in August or beyond looms amid that. And in fact, Kenny Mapanga of SABC News will join us in the next few minutes to give us a fuller update on that. And Sipho, some concerning developments coming through from Kenya amid the protests, and it would seem a clampdown even on the activities of broadcasters.
But remember, it's almost a year of what happened, the anti-tax demonstration that left over 60 people. So this is the political temperature in the capital city, Nairobi, yesterday, that the police had to raffle and have a confrontation with some of the young people. As you know, that protests have been also around the media freedom, but also the issue of the living conditions, the issues of human rights, the issues of victims of past police crackdowns that have happened in Kenya. This has pushed where Kenya finds itself there to last. And that's how we find even the human rights activist who was killed last year was a memory of Hussein Khaled, who was killed in Nairobi, and the 64 other Kenyans. So this is the issue of maybe a script that has been there in 2024 being brought back in 2025.
Yeah, concerning developments. Let's talk about M7, Uganda's president, Yoweri Museveni. What has he had to say about the situation in the Middle East, particularly as it relates to Israel, Iran, and the United States?
Remember now, he was speaking wearing the cap of the chairperson of the non-aligned movement from last year until 2027, and also responding to a complaint by the Iranian ambassador to Uganda to say, why is he quiet? And he said that he was still externalizing his views to understand this conflict, and hence Museveni came out very blazing to us, saying that actually both states, they know, and the role of the CIA in terms of dealing with Iranian's former leader, Mossadegh, and also how Americans and also the Israelis have provoked Iran to last. So here, he was trying to balance, to say that coming from the non-aligned movement, this is what they are viewing this conflict. It was almost a 5-page letter that Yoweri Museveni, as the chairperson of the non-alignment movement, have to echo those voices to us.
And no prizes for guessing what's on your historical archives today, and it's apt, Sipho. Tell me about the 26th of June, 1955.
So it was actually the end of the National Congress, what you call the Congress of the People in Cape Town, in Soweto. It started yesterday on the 25th. It ended on the 26th of June, 1955. It's almost 7 decades, 70 years of the Congress of People. The estimate of delegates, there was 2,844 delegates from all over the country to engage on the Freedom Charter. And that's where you find that when we do commemoration of the Tulas, we also look at the bridge between the Charter, the Freedom Charter, and our present Constitution, and the bridging of generations to us. So 7 decades ago, have we attained all those ideals of the Freedom Charter. Hence today at the Freedom Park to us, there will be a youth session with the Ministry of Justice and other Chapter 9s, just to engage with the youth to us to say 70 years later, where are we? 51 years later of our own Constitution, where are we when we look at the challenges that are still facing the young people of this country? Asante sana Thulas, as we're still in the conversation, SAFM observing the Soweto uprising.
Sipho, thank you for that. That's Sipho Mantula there with your Africa update for today.
Kathy Mohlahlana on SAFM.
If you're ready to talk, I'm here to listen, and nothing is off the agenda. Join me on The Talking Point every day from 9 a.m. to 12 noon. Only on SAFM.
You are listening to The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
All right, so let me give you this story then, coming out of the Western Cape in a significant breakthrough. What's being hailed as a significant breakthrough for public transportation in the province. 2 of the province's largest taxi association, the Cape Amalgamated Taxi Association, CATA, and the Cape Organization for the Democratic Taxi Association, CODETA, have formally reconciled after a period of violent conflict over key transport routes. The agreement, signed on the 24th of this month, is aimed at restoring peace, ensuring commuter safety, and stabilizing the minibus taxi industry after a series of deadly clashes. Let's welcome Mandla Hermanas, who is the chairperson of Santaco in the Western Cape. Good morning to you and thank you for your time. Just give us the outlines on what terms have you agreed to this cessation of hostilities and reconciliation between the two organizations?
Thank you, Thulas, for having me. This has been an ongoing thing because the conflict on that route is more than 20 years.
Mm.
And it was brought about by issue of operating licenses, because when operating licenses were issued, they did not mirror the operation on the ground at the time. So now it had to take one association being told, look, even whilst you have been providing this service for all these years, it's the other association that the operating license to provide the service.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm switching to say, okay,
Mr. Hermanas, let me ask you to stay on hold. We seem to be having a bit of a challenge with that line there to Mandla Hermanas of Santaco in the Western Cape. And he rightly alludes and in a way almost preempts what I was going to ask, that, you know,
no.
Is this one going to hold? But let me allow you to continue, Mr. Hermanas. You are making the point about aligning the permitting with the operations on the ground.
Yes. So that's what we had to do. And the association that had been providing the service without the licenses actually agreed to cease operations on that route. But there are arrangements also, because there are two routes involved which have similar challenges. So there's been arrangements where on one route, both associations will operate, share the route in line with their operating licenses.
In fact, Mr. Hermanas, just for the ease of understanding what the agreement entails, I think let's go at it step by step. Let's start with the arrangement around the route of Mfuleni to Somerset.
Yeah, the route from Mfuleni to Somerset now will be operated solely by the association that is based in Mfuleni, because that is the association that has the operating license for that route.
Which one is that?
That would be CODETA Mfuleni Somerset Taxi Association.
I see.
Yeah.
And then the other route, Khayelitsha to Somerset?
And then the Khayelitsha to Somerset will be shared by Khayelitsha Somerset, which is an association that is affiliated to CODETA, and Lwandle Taxi Association, which is an association affiliated to CATA.
I do want to ask you about the sustainability of the truce that we have now, but there's something that you mentioned when we started the conversation that I think deserves further clarity for people who are not insiders to the taxi industry. When you say that at the heart of the disputes has been a misalignment between the licensing and permitting on the one hand and the operations on the ground, what do you mean by that? Are you saying, for example, that there were instances where people were granted permits for routes where someone else was already operating who was not permitted for those routes? Just to clarify for us, for those who are not in the industry.
Absolutely. That is actually the case where the Lwandle Taxi Association was providing the service between Somerset and Lwandle area to the Mfuleni area. But when they were doing that without an operating license, and then when operating licenses were issued, they were issued to Mfuleni Somerset Taxi Association. And initially there was a gentleman's agreement where the Mfuleni Somerset Taxi Association, the CODETA Line Taxi Association, would only drop off passengers in Somerset West, and the Lwandle Taxi Association would then drop off passengers in Mfuleni. But that was not sustainable, and it was a gentleman's agreement. And then over the years, when new leadership came in, especially from the Codeta side, when they looked at their operating licenses. So they started asking questions, but why are we not able to load in Somerset whilst our operating licenses permit us to take people from Fulani to Somerset West and back? So that had been, and there had been court cases, but that thing could not be resolved. It took over 20 years to get us to where we are now. So that was the challenge.
So you will understand the skepticism of some of us when we hear that you've reached a settlement and now there's going to be this reconciliation. Yesterday, I made a quip with Melissa Buta, and I said it's best expressed in isiXhosa. Wakunini kuthethwa ngekhatha neCodeta. Why should we believe that this truce will hold?
I think one of the things that will make this hold is because what has been signed now is not a gentleman's agreement. All parties are involved and the department is involved. And what will happen is that when operating licenses are being issued now, they will reflect this current agreement that we have, so that in the near future you don't have people coming up and saying, but my operating license is saying this, but I operate this way. I want to operate in terms of my operating license. Right. And also because it's a formalized agreement, then it will always be easy to go back to say this is what we had agreed on. Because in the past, we had only relied on what the leadership at the time had agreed to, and that was not a formal agreement.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time this morning. That's Mandla Hermanas, who is chairperson of Santaco in the Western Cape.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning, top story. The closure of Pretoria's N1 South at Storeham full to recover an overturned truck and lost load. It is going to take a while to sort this out. Tshwane Metro say 2 to 3 hours. They posted that about 5:30 this morning, so that takes us right through rush hour. It's an amazing backlog. A short time ago, we had average speeds coming from the back of the queue down towards Storeham full of just 2 kilometres an hour across all lanes. Queue time from the back 2 hours. 2 hours to get through, basically from the N4 highway, the N4 Bakwena highway, down through Montana, Sefako Makato, and down towards the closure. So stay off it. The local alternative is obviously Sefako Makato across the highway down to Moloto Road, and then from Moloto Road down Baviansport, and that's ridiculously backed up with all that traffic diverting there as well. Vanderboom Junction, Vanderboom Port area, that's quite busy. Looks like a lot of traffic might be exiting Montana and heading that way this morning. So you got a real problem around the M1 closure, and you got some problems a little bit further afield on the alternatives as well. Make sure you got plenty of time to get out and get through that part of Pretoria this morning. R21 North queuing up into the roadworks at Tembisa. It's quite heavy as you leave the airport on your way to Pretoria. Looks like an issue on the N3 South today between Buccleuch and Marlborough Drive. All of a sudden that's backlogging, and a stationary vehicle N3 North ramp to the N12 at Giluli. So unfortunately, another big morning of traffic coming through from Germiston and Alberton up that N3 through Bedford. You expect some delays leaving Joburg on the M2 out towards Benrose and Denver. If you're heading out of Joburg direction Germiston, that's going to have you significantly backed up at this stage. Durban M7 going into Pinetown stays heavy due to the closure of Stapleton Road. Broken down vehicle. It's one of those vehicles with an abnormal load sign on it. It's stuck before Hammersdale, so quite heavy backlogs from Key Ridge up through Cliffdale area. And Cape Town, a lot of pressure on the N2. The off-ramp to Borchards Quarry is closed on the inbound side due to flooding, so N2 inbound from Khayelitsha to the airport slow. And then you've got a broken down vehicle at Rappenberg Road causing some more delays inbound. And if you're outbound, just watch for some flooding around the Robert Sobukwe exit on your way towards the airport. Also a crash, N1 into town at the N7. That's heavy from Plattercliff Hill. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
They all believe they will be crowned champions, but gold medallions are reserved for the best of them all. It is the incredible clash of the 12 African women's national teams. Catch all the 24 matches of the Cap Total Energies Women's Africa Cup of Nations Morocco 2024 from 5 to 26 July 2025 on SABC Plus, S3, SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC radio stations. Where Africa competes, South Africa connects. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Welcome back to the sun-drenched shores of St. Marie, where the beaches are beautiful and the murders are mysterious. It's Death in Paradise Season 7. New cases, quirky suspects, and D.I. Jack Mooney, who's still figuring out the island and how to drink coconut water gracefully. Catch the show where paradise meets puzzling crime. Because even in paradise, someone always has a secret. Death in Paradise Season 7. Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on S3. Starts 28 May. S3. Open up.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
5 minutes to 7 on this Thursday. Plans for the burial of former Zambian President Edgar Lungu are turning into something of an ugly public spectacle amidst a major feud between his family and the country's government, as mourners gathered for a funeral mass at the Cathedral of Christ the King in Johannesburg yesterday. News came through that the funeral had been interdicted by an order of the High Court made by mutual agreement between the two sides. At the heart of the dispute are the family's wishes to have Lungu buried in South Africa and the Zambian government's insistence, on the other hand, that his mortal remains be repatriated to the country so he can be buried according to state protocols. SABC News reporter Kenny Mapanga has been tracking and following that dispute in court and joins us now for an update. Kenny, it's an extraordinary turn of events for this interdict to come through as mourners actually gathered in the cathedral. Tell me a bit more about the details of what's entailed in the dispute, but also in the order of court that has been made now.
Indeed. Good morning to you, Thulas, and to the listeners. Essentially, if we remember, following the passing of the former president, that there actually was a repatriation process underway that was actually taking place to take the remains of the former president to Zambia. We understand that when the family learned that his successor would be receiving the body of the former president, that, of course, halted that repatriation that was taking place. We then know that the following days had the Zambian government trying to engage with the Lungu family. Of course, that wasn't successful. They then turned to the South African government for intervention. And the South African government made it clear that their position is that the former president, such as former President Lungu, should be honored in a ceremony as fitting as a state funeral. However, they are legally obligated to respect the wishes of the Lungu family, which was at the time that they wanted to bury the former president in Johannesburg. So it is against that backdrop that the president, or rather the South African government, could not intervene in this dispute between the two. Now, in the absence of any other available remedy to the Zambian government, they were forced to turn to the urgent court in the Gauteng High Court. That's why it happened almost at the last hour, where they approached the Gauteng High Court in Pretoria for that interim interdict pending a resolution into that legal dispute. So that's why it happened literally hours before the planned ceremony at 11.
So while you're talking about pending the resolution of that dispute, the timelines, according to this court order, Kenny, puts us on a path where, I mean, a man who died on the 6th of June may possibly not be buried until August, mid-August, thereabouts.
Yes, that's correct. He may be sitting in the morgue for over a month and some change. However, it's important to note that this long window that gives a timeline for all parties to prepare their defenses in this particular serious issue, it doesn't mean that the two parties can't come together to come and make a conclusion or resolution outside of court and dispose, of this matter before it even needs to go to court. But if the two parties cannot find one another, then you're correct, Thulas. They'll be sitting with the former president in that morgue for at least over a month prior to that hearing being made and the main adjudication, which will decide whether there should be a repatriation to Zambia for a state funeral or if the family's wishes to bury him in Johannesburg will be granted. But essentially, because that undertaker was served by the Zambian government, they actually couldn't move without any directive or order from the Gauteng High Court. So that is why you saw the mourners sitting in the church, just waiting to find out what is going to happen next. And then that's when the two parties made the undertakings that a burial will not go ahead until this matter is fully ventilated on the 4th of August, 2025.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for that. That's Kenny Panga, SABC News reporter there, just giving you an update on that feud and dispute that is playing itself out between the family of the late former president of Zambia, Edgar Lungu, on the one hand, and the Zambian government on the other hand. It's a fascinating debate on its own, because the family insists that it was the late former president's wishes that his successor, Hakainde Hichilema, HH, should not attend his funeral, given the rivalry and I suppose, the contest that occurred between the two men. And how do you balance that? How do you balance the family's wishes on the one hand and the wishes of the government that relate to the public persona and historical importance and role of the person who is now late? It's one of those imponderables that now face the court. But right now, let's check in with Ann Musa with the latest news.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30754. Now that's good news.
In our top stories, the G20 Sherpa meeting continues at Sun City and take-home pay figures continues to decline. Good morning. The latest report by BankServe Africa shows the take-home pay declined for the third consecutive month in the month of May. BankServe Africa attributes the decrease to a challenging economic landscape characterized by slow economic growth domestically and a deteriorating global economic outlook amid tensions in the Middle East. The latest data shows the nominal average take-home pay dropped by 1.3% to reach 17,296 in May compared to April. The N1 at the Stormfall Road off-ramp in Pretoria has been completely closed to traffic. This as a truck has lost its load on the highway. Motorists are urged to use alternative routes. Emergency services are on the scene. Well, apologies. We seem to be having a technical difficulty with our sound not playing. Further afield, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has held a new agreement to set up a special tribunal on Russia's invasion of Ukraine, saying there must be real steps to make it work and hold everyone responsible to account. He has also called for better unity among European countries. Recapping the top story, as the United Nations marks 80 years of existence, the UN G20 Sherpa says the G20 is making meaningful strides. For SAFM News, I am Ann Musa.
Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 30754 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out.
Here's some breaking news you might have missed. Gordon, a 44-year-old man, switched to Outsurance and now saves an unbelievable 2,794 Rand a month on his 2019 Ford Everest 2-litre automatic. Outsurance clients always get something out. Get a quote today and see how much Outsurance could save you on your car insurance. Call 08600 60,000 or visit outsurance.co.za. You always get something out. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's and information online.
It's a very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, soccer action, Mamelodi Sundowns FIFA Club World Cup journey has come to an end after a goalless draw against Fluminense, and that took place in Miami last night. And we'll bring you news from the PSL relegation playoff. Cape Town City is relegated. Details just before 7:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. If you're just joining us, here's the top story. The N1 in Pretoria closed going south at Storenville Road. A massive truck crash and lost load to be recovered. 20 Metro saying this will take the entirety of this morning's drive time to clear up. Major delays. 2 kilometres an hour is your average speed. 2 hours is the backlog of traffic to get through from the back of the queue down to the closure at Storenville. Local routes like Moloto Road and Baviansport and Sefako Makato out of Montana towards Moloto, all very heavy. Motorists going the other way and clogging up the whole Vanderboom area as well. So major delays on the highways. The alternative routes are under pressure this morning. It is going to be a tough one. Make sure you've got plenty of time to get through there, and just where possible, stay away from those local alternatives and get off before you get in trouble, if you like. Stationary vehicle, Joburg's N3 North ramping through Galulis onto the N12. That's heavy again from Germiston. Big delays going out of Joburg M2 out through Benrose, Denver. If you're on your way out of the city centre, you expect to sit there for some time today. Breakdown up at Hammersdale on your way to Pietermaritzburg. Slow from Cliffdale, Key Ridge area. M7 into Pinetown, again very heavy from Hans Detman. And Cape Town, a crash. N1 into town at the N7. That's pushing a traffic all the way back through to Platte to Cliff Hill. And the N2 fairly busy. The off-ramp to Borchers Quarry at Nyanga is closed, keeping pressure in from Khayelitsha towards the airport exit, which is your off-ramp after that Borchers Quarry closure. With your traffic updates, I'm Rob Byrne.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
It's coming up to 6 minutes after 7 on this Thursday morning. Good morning. It's great to be in your company. This is the second hour of the Morning Brief. I'm taking your calls. The number to dial is 086 000 2032. 086 000 2032. Please send me WhatsApp voice notes to 061 410 4107. The big reflection, of course, is around the 70th anniversary of the adoption of the Freedom Charter, and the reports from the time of the adoption of the Freedom Charter, I don't want to lie, they captivate my imagination. Just the extraordinary nature in which people just came together from all walks of life, daring the system, daring the roadblocks that were being set up by the police, trying to stop people from reaching Kliptown for that gathering that was known as the Congress of the People. But you know what they say about an idea whose time has come, right? No force on earth can stop an idea whose time has come. And so it was that people, I think the estimates say close to 3,000 people gathered from all walks of life, black, white, you name it, everyone coming together to envision a democratic South Africa founded on social justice. If you track the history of the struggles before then, you will find that there were multiple streams of struggles, sometimes feeling like, the black people were fighting for their own cause and colored people for their own cause, white South Africans for their own cause, etc., etc. But this was the one time, the point of coming together, of saying that we are bigger than that thing I was saying a few days ago that almost got me in trouble with someone, that the power of the people is mightier than the people in power. The power of the people is mightier than the people in power. So we'll be reflecting on that, because not just the romanticism of it all, right? Let's not be stuck on the romanticism of it all in terms of the political and civil rights and individual liberties that clearly permeate through our democratic constitution. But let's have the hard conversations about the promises of the Freedom Charter as they relate to transformation of the economy, the means of production and ownership thereof, and participation by everyone, all of us, in the economy. So we'll be having that conversation in the next few minutes with Piti Kantuli, my good friend, poet, artist and academic, as well as Mondli Makanya, who is a veteran journalist and editor who's written recently and reflecting and sort of framing the Freedom Charter and arguing for its usefulness in framing what we are doing now, the current project of democratic South Africa. And then a bit later on, we'll have a conversation that in a way detracts from the promises of the Freedom Charter, right? This is the conversation about what's known as the water mafias. Believe it or not, there is such a thing. The water mafias, basically, this is people that are said to be sabotaging water infrastructure. These are criminal syndicates that are said to be sabotaging deliberately water infrastructure. You will have heard recently the incidents that were occurring as the gift of the givers were responding to the situation in and around Mthatha, encountering people that were saying, trying to stop them from water distribution. The South African Human Rights Commission will weigh in on how that fits in with a systemic problem that has to do with these syndicates that do tend to interfere with the right to water, which I imagine those who were gathered in Kliptown had in mind, that the right to access to water would be entrenched in democratic South Africa. As I said, you are a part of the conversation. Call me on 086 000 2032, as well as your WhatsApp voice notes on 061 410 4107. So let's start the second hour of the morning brief.
So Taryn, you've just graduated cum laude, but nothing says you're a genius quite like selling your car to We Buy Cars.
Absolutely. My car was an 18th birthday present, and it's time to move on to something a bit more mature.
So where did you hear about We Buy Cars?
All of my friends are using We Buy Cars. I would have had legit FOMO if I hadn't used them. And it was so quick. I did it on my laptop while sending around my CV.
Smart move, Taryn. Graduated and upgraded. We Buy Cars. Geared for success. Geared for you.
This week on FC Meets, former Moroka Swallows and Baroka dribbling wizard Sipho Moeti, affectionately known as Gobe, shares his rise from being worshipped at festive games to his inevitable rise to the Betway Premiership. He shares his story of disappointment, triumph and controversy. FC Meets, football made for community by community. Game. Tune into SABC Sports on DTT Channel 4 the Saturday at 6 p.m. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Big stories of the day. #The Morning Brief.
11 minutes after 7. The people shall govern. The people shall share in the country's wealth. The land shall be shared among those who work it. There shall be houses, security and comfort. Just some of the clauses of the historic Freedom Charter adopted on this day in 1955, 70 years ago today. They were a promise and a bequest from that generation of South Africans to future generations, including ours, based on the desire to see a democratic, just and equal society emerge from the ruins of apartheid. Much reflection will no doubt happen today about the journey traversed. For its part, the party that's led South Africa's governance for the past 31 years, the ANC, says 8 out of the 10 clauses of the Freedom Charter have been fully implemented, with the remaining 2, land redistribution and wealth ownership, still in progress. So let's start the reflections of this morning with Professor Pitika Ntuli, my good friend, poet, artist and academic. My friend, it's been a while. Let's start with the...
It's been a while.
Let's start with the romanticism of it all, because I suppose it is needed, and the poetry entailed and the rhetoric of the document. Just frame for us what the document represented in terms of the organic work that went into preparing for the Congress of the People, and how it then transpired, leading to the adoption of the Freedom Charter.
The adoption of the Freedom Charter it involved people coming from different in the parts of the country, all of them armed with hope and dreams, from the future, to be removed from the shackles that constraint them. The promises that were given were very good and very ideal. Free education, or the doors of culture and education being opened, the employment being created. And all of those issues are very valid things that any human being really wants. Now, when we ask that 70 years from then, what has happened? It's a very scientific fact that there can be no light without a shadow or a shadow without a light. Now we need, therefore, today to separate the shadow from the light.
Mm-hmm.
As they've been totally in silence. Now, we did that in 1959, and then later, when we took over power in 1994, then new things came therefore into being.
Mm-hmm.
We came up with brilliant ideas. We had the RDP, reconstruction and development. What is it that we are reconstructing? What is it that we are developing? The agenda is just very clean and clear. Only needs ideology to implement it. We went up and we said, in order to fulfill the opening of the doors of arts and culture, we had an architect document that says how the arts are going to play a role in this charterist innovation. Then we said then there should be a national curriculum statement for higher education, where education could start with our own kind of languages and also address the issues that are there. Then we also came up with the Chapter 9 institutions, all of them that were geared to fulfill that kind of a charterist.
Yeah.
But then somewhere along the line, the neo-coloniality, that template of oppression, came and took over, the ruling class. That it became now more about my self-serving greed and corruption that everybody is actually speaking about.
It seems to me, Pitikantuli, that there's not much disagreement around the ideals of the Freedom Charter as they relate to the political, civil and individual liberties. Where you start having the debate, it seems to be around the transformative clauses of the Freedom Charter, and that's not unlike the debates that you then see around the transformative provisions of the Constitution that we enjoy. Does the failure or lack of progress or sluggish progress towards attaining those transformative elements detract from the validity and value of the rest of the document known as the Freedom Charter?
No, it definitely does. In fact, more than that, it is a betrayal of the dreams of the original people that set up that in a charter. We turned the back against them. But one then would have hoped that with the government of national unity, this is an opportunity where the DA that seems to have been doing quite very well in the Western Cape, bring those skills into a government and put them. Let those that were not in Parliament actually before prove that they are worthy to be in Parliament to deliver what they've been requested actually to do. So that in other words then, with the government of national unity, that is a very important thing. There is now a meter talk about the question of national dialogue. You Thulasizwe, you know very well. For the past 10 years, I've been pushing it that with a number of the professors and top people that we need to talk with traditional leaders, traditional healers, the students, business, the people, in order to avert the despair that seems to be parading the streets and the minds of our people today.
All right, let's leave it there for this morning. Thank you for your reflections. That's Professor Pitikantuli, poet, artist, and academic. Listening to that at the same time is Mondli Makanya, the senior and veteran journalist, also editor-in-chief, outgoing editor of City Press. Good morning to you, Mondli. You and I had a conversation about this over the weekend on SABC News, and we were reflecting on a piece that you wrote. But I also would want you to start, in that piece that you wrote, you reflect on the Freedom Charter and its journey over the ages, the various contentions about its nature and character, as well as its ideological influences. Talk to me a little bit about that before we get into the reflections of what can be done with the Freedom Charter in this moment.
Well, the Freedom Charter, when it was adopted on June 26, 1955, I hope it wasn't as cold as it is today, in Cape Town, was after a long process of people going out across the country and going and asking people, what is your ideal vision of South Africa? What should South Africa look like when it is free? And people gave their inputs, and then eventually people then gathered. In Cape Town, delegates from different parts of the country and different organizations gathered in Cape Town, and they adopted the Freedom Charter and gave this vision of what the free South Africa should look like. Some people rejected it, and some even within the ANC, and the Africanist, so-called Africanist vision wing of the ANC said no. And the thing that they objected to mostly was the fact that the Freedom Charter started by saying South Africa belongs to all who live in it. And those on that wing of the ANC felt that it is a betrayal of the anti-colonialist struggle. It was a betrayal of the African liberation vision, that you are saying that South Africa belongs to all who live in it. But actually, there are people who arrived here, colonized South Africa, conquered the indigenous people, and we cannot say South Africa belongs to all who live in it. It belongs to Africans. So that was the beginning of the rejection of the Freedom Charter. And then those people left to form the PAC, and then later on there was the Black consciousness developed. And Black consciousness, and this is now after the ANC and the PAC were banned in 1960, the Black consciousness tradition said, no, we do not want the Freedom Charter. Let's emphasize Black liberation. That's what's more important rather than this, what they felt was too accommodating aspect of the Freedom Charter. And then there were people kind of like more on the right wing who felt that the Freedom Charter was too socialistic because it said kind of like that. The Freedom Charter spoke about the ownership of the economy and the collective ownership of the economy, the commanding heights shall be owned by the people. So there were many aspects of the Freedom Charter that were rejected on the left and the right
over the decades. So let's talk then, Mondli. In your piece, you talk about, I suppose, if I understand what you were doing with that piece was to say, let's critique the Freedom Charter, but let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. Tell me about that argument, and also your arguments around active citizenry, because I suppose, in a way, that gathering represented some of the best of active citizenry and being engaged in envisioning.
I think the essence of the Freedom Charter is what is the essence of our Constitution today. The Freedom Charter was where the Constitution that we have today was born. Because when the ANC was now considering the ANC was considering the principles of the negotiations that they were going to go into with the National Party government, they went back to the Freedom Charter and said, this is what we envisaged that South Africa should look like. And the Freedom Charter was that particular, formed the kernel of the Constitution of South Africa that we have today. And the first clause of the Freedom Charter says, the people shall govern. And that was what galvanized people in the 80s in particular. And the 80s was a very formative part of was the height of resistance of against apartheid. And in the 1980s, people actually governed South Africa. They were saying like, we will govern ourselves.
Yes.
And that's what we lost. And we lost it when we became a democracy, because that was the essence of the Freedom Charter, that we will not be governed from Pretoria. We will govern ourselves. And I think that when we became a democracy, it became a very top-down, it became a top-down democracy rather than a bottom-up democracy. And we should begin to do that again and actually say, let the people own the state of South Africa. Let the people own the government of South Africa. Let Pretoria not be the place where everything is determined. Let people at the grassroots level, civil society, the faiths, and the trade unions and all of that, let everybody have a stake in the governance of South Africa.
So lastly then, Mondli, in what you are saying, what does the President's national dialogue represent in terms of a moment? Is that the moment for South Africans to reclaim that mantra of the people shall govern, or is there a problem with it because it's driven by government as opposed to being organic in ways that are comparable to the processes building up to the Freedom Charter?
I think that it's an opportunity for the government to take a step back. The government should actually take a step back and actually, this process of the national dialogue should give the government that opportunity to step back and say, look, people of South Africa, make your voice heard, and let it be reflected in the things that we do. Unfortunately, we've had a lot of plans in the past. There's been many processes like this, and we had the process of the constitution of the conceptualization of the National Development Plan, what is called the NDP, which has basically gone to waste now, where people were asked what they believe should be the priorities. And the NDP is gathering dust at the moment. And this, the way the President and the government have characterized the national dialogue process is that the people of South Africa must have a voice again. And I hope that they should actually go back and look at the Freedom Charter, the process that led up to the Freedom Charter, and what became the Freedom Charter, and that they take that into account as the national dialogue takes place, and that they reclaim the spirit which led to the Freedom Charter, and that the spirit that became the Freedom Charter.
All right, Mondli, I've got to thank you for your time and your insights this morning. That's Mondli Makhanya, a veteran journalist and outgoing editor of City Press.
This week on FC Meets, former Moroka Swallows and Baroka dribbling wizard Sipho Moeti, affectionately known as Gobe, shares his rise from being worshipped at festive games to his inevitable rise to the Betway Premiership. He shares his story of disappointment, triumph and controversy. FC Meets, football made for community by community. Richeta game. Tune into SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 the Saturday at 6 p.m. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195 and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
Hey there. Need to know your TV license balance but don't want to wait? No sweat. Just send a quick SMS with your ID or TV license number to 44210. Remember, standard SMS rates apply. And presto, your balance pops right up anytime, anywhere. It's as easy as pie. So why procrastinate? Give it a try and get your info in a flash. T's and C's apply.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Good morning to you, Zai. So the Brazilians of Fluminense a stumbling block for the Brazilians of Mamelodi, but the Brazilians of Mamelodi don't. They bow out with a lot of pride, that they carry.
Absolutely. And at the same time, now we're hearing news of Sundowns are downsizing. I don't know if it's got to do with the Downs part of their name, but that's how we're feeling right now. A little bit down, but listen, we are definitely holding out for our team, Mamelodi Sundowns. They've revealed plans to trim the playing personnel to a manageable size in the coming weeks. Yeah, they were eliminated from the FIFA Club World Cup following that goalless draw with Fluminense, who progressed to the round of 16 along with the Group F leaders Borussia Dortmund. Now, Coach Miguel Cardoso confirming at the Hard Rock Stadium in Miami that they will be working tirelessly to reduce the squad size.
We want to reduce the number of players in the team. We want to make a smaller team, smaller group, but also we want to make it more, even with more quality. So reduce, but make it with more quality, so that we have already more than one player with high quality for each position. We have more than two, but we need to have two that can replace each other 100%. That is what we need to do.
Moving now to some more action. Fluminense booked their spot in the FIFA Club World Cup last 16 to secure second place in Group F behind Borussia Dortmund, who edged Ulsan HD 1-0. Now, Monterrey scored 3 goals in a 10-minute span for the first half and went on to defeat Urawa Red Diamonds 4-0 and advancing to the knockout rounds in the Club World Cup. Monterrey finished second in Group F behind Inter Milan, who defeated River Plate 2-0 in a match in Seattle. Monterrey plays Borussia Dortmund on Tuesday at Atlanta and in the round of 16. Now, Albert College, they sealed their promotion to the Betway Premiership while condemning Cape Town City to relegation following a 1-0 victory at Olympia Park Stadium. Let's recap that winning moment.
Albert College have done it. They will now play PSL football from Kazakh Stars, Uppington City, Durban City, to Kaizer Chiefs, Orlando Pirates, Masandawana. PSL, are you ready? Moswenko Ute.
It's unbelievable. It's football. That's why we love it. Yes, tears are rolling down from some quarters, but there's definitely tears of joy in the other quarters.
And finally, cricket. South Africa and New Zealand cricket have confirmed a historic white ball tour in 2026. For the first time, T20 internationals feature both the Proteas men and women, and their Kiwi counterparts will be playing as double headers across 5 venues from the 15th to the 25th of March. We'll swing back. More sport, top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Good morning, I'm Anne Musa. In the headlines, commercial and small-scale farmers in the Vryheid area in northern KwaZulu-Natal say the outbreak of foot and mouth disease is crippling their businesses and the local economy. As the United Nations marks 80 years of existence, the UN G20 Sherpa, Nelson Mufu, says the G20 is making meaningful strides to ensure multilateralism remains effective and inclusive, particularly for global trade and cooperation amid rising geopolitical tensions. And the N1 in Pretoria at the Stormfall Road off-ramp has been completely closed to traffic, this as a truck lost its load on the highway. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Yes, the truck crash has caused amazing problems this morning. In the last few minutes, they have managed to open a couple of lanes on the N1 South going into Stormfall, but the damage is done. It is still very much a recovery, live situation there. A massive amount of fruit that came off a truck. Someone telling me that looks like it's marula that's in boxes all over the highway. So very heavy traffic queuing under a lot of pressure from the N4, but quite a highway just after Pumalani Plaza, all the way down through Sefaka Makato, right down to the closures at Stormfall, or anything that acts as alternative route through that area is jamming heavily. Maloto Road, Sefako Makato to Maloto Road out of Montana, above the Arnsport Road that you sort of loop around, running parallel to the highway. Even Vanderboom, Sefako Makato down through towards Lavender, Vanderboom Pass, Vanderboom Junction, Vanderboom Port, it's all very heavy, and that's a net result of all that traffic coming off the highway, diverting, or coming out of Montana and diverting that way as well. Just staying in Pretoria, there's some roadworks on Linwood Road through towards Sunlum Street, heading towards the highway. That's quite busy. Crash on the N3 South before Marlborough Drive, coming off Buccleuch. It's heavy heading to Buccleuch, busy with the onlooking as well. Collision on the N1, the Mike 1 North before Empire Road, very heavy coming up through Central Joburg from Ormonde. M2 behind that, queuing up to get into the crowd as well. Durban out to Pietermaritzburg, still being held by that breakdown at Hammersdale. It's been there all morning. Very heavy from Key Ridge. Cape Town crash. M1 into town at the N7. That traffic all the way back to Belleville's Old Oak Road this morning. And a vehicle on fire in the rain. Get that, eh? What a bit of bad luck that is. The M3 inbound at UCT. So very heavy coming from Newlands on your way to Hospital Bends. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
You know, Dowling, I've got to tell you, this is one of those stories that, I don't know, it just distresses me each time I have to report on these quarterly figures and they're just pointing in absolutely the wrong direction. It's my least favorite part of doing this show, I must just confess. Tell me what's happening with the construction sector.
Tulas continue to persist, with Afrimat's construction index declining 2.6% year-on-year in the first quarter. Heavy rainfall and limited government investment in infrastructure have contributed to the decline. Economist Roelof Botha, who compiles the index, pointed to high interest rates. He notes that the construction sector, being the most labor-intensive, has been impacted by the restrictive monetary policy, preventing it from recovering from pandemic, the lows that it hit during the pandemic. Now, despite some positive indicators, such as a 2.1% increase in construction employment and a 0.2% rise in hardware sales, the sector faces significant challenges. Botha suggests that the government needs to start spending particularly on infrastructure to stimulate activity and improve decision-making capabilities within the public agencies. Now, Afrimat CEO Andries van Heerden expresses readiness to support the government's planned 1 trillion rand infrastructure investment over the next 3 years, which could drive job creation and boost economic activity. The company is optimistic about the potential for increased demand for construction materials, particularly in logistics and rail maintenance. So it seems like companies are already willing to support and just down our tools and get working.
I think what really distresses me about this print and others like it that come out on the wrong side of what we want is just this realization, this sense that you're watching an ugly movie playing itself out, and the people of South Africa are in that ugly movie, and knowing that what the alternative, the counterfactual should be, but it's just not coming to fruition quarter after quarter after quarter.
And very employment intensive industries as well.
Let's move on and talk about the commodity prices. Tell me what's happening there.
All right, so Grindrod, they've reported a business update, and they're saying that they're struggling with pressure from declining commodity prices and lower profits from the Maputo port. The group's earnings from the port of Maputo declined 7% in the first half of its financial year, and outgoing CEO Xolani Mbambo attributed this to unfavorable markets, citing declines in thermal coal, magnetite, chrome, and graphite prices. However, exports from other dry bulk terminals recovered, and the Matola terminal reported record volumes in May. The company also maintained steady net debt and increased its stake in the Matola terminal in Mozambique. Grindrod operates in over 20 countries and has a quarter stake in the Maputo Port Development Company. Now, Mbambo also expressed confidence in the company's prospects, particularly in Mozambique and private sector rail participation. The group is exploring partnerships and is investing in its own rolling stock for rail participation.
Lastly, Dowling, how are the markets looking at this hour?
Kicking things off in Asia, now stocks mostly in positive territory. Japan's Nikkei leading the gains there, touching a 4-month high this morning, up 1.4%. This as traders continue to assess developments in the Middle East, betting on a ceasefire. Over in Wall Street, futures in the green. Geopolitics still in focus, but traders will also be shifting their attention to economic data, with the US GDP figures due today. Coming back home, markets trending lower, with the all share shedding 0.6% in yesterday's session. This negative sentiment not filtering through to the currency scene. The rand trading firmer this morning at 17.69 to the dollar.
All right, I've got to thank you for that. That's Ndauling Lechela. She'll be back with one more update for you, and that's coming up just after 8:30.
A stage awaits. Not for applause, but for possibility. For over 40 years, Standard Bank has championed the arts. And at the National Arts Festival, we don't just watch talent rise, we help grow it. Through our Standard Bank Young Artist Winners, raw voices find power, unseen stories take the spotlight, and what begins as a dream grows into a legacy. Join us in Makanda for the festival. Standard Bank, proud lead sponsor of B20 South Africa, an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
Honey, what are you doing?
I'm stretching for tonight.
I thought you're not dancing at bachelorette parties anymore.
Baby, we need the money to put Johnny through matriek mos.
And what's the police uniform for?
The clients feel safer when I wear it.
No, man, just sell your bakkie to We Buy Cars. They give the best prices and they pay you within minutes.
Okay, but can I just go and dance one more time, please? You know how much I love it.
No, the buyer's already on his way here.
Wow, okay.
Strapped for cash? Just sell your vehicle to We Buy Cars. The easiest way to sell your car by far.
Keeping your family healthy this winter can feel like a daunting task. Try the Lung Shield range. It includes capsules to support healthy lungs and immunity, a syrup for kids that supports the immune system and promotes lung health, and an effervescent with 13 essential ingredients to optimize immune function. Put your family's health first this winter with the Lung Shield range. Available without a prescription at leading pharmacies. Lung Shield, prescribed by doctors, recommended by pharmacists.
The citizens and the believers are in a high-level clash of emotions. Drama meets tension. The fight for 3 points is real. This is the PSL Promotional Playoffs. Catch the thrilling encounter between Cape Town City and Cashrick Stars this Monday, 30 June at 2:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and SABC2. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
You are listening to the Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
Let me take some of your reflections, and lots of them, I must say, coming in that are coming through the WhatsApp line, as well as in a moment I'll take a call. Lindiwe says, a country that can't give citizens the most basic need, cold water, is a confirmed failed state. So don't expect it to give people jobs, houses, etc. So that's the reflection there from Lindiwe. And then you have someone else, Felix in Midrand, reflecting on the conversation around the 70th anniversary of the adoption of the Freedom Charter, which is being marked today. Felix says the Freedom Charter wasn't a coming together of all races. It was the conglomeration of Africans and a handful of whites and Indians, mainly Jewish, who, by virtue of their whiteness, were central in the diluting of our struggle in the writing of that document. The PAC's view, which succinctly captured our struggle, is completely and deliberately cancelled. In our haste to appease whiteness and position ourselves as the good blacks, we go out of our way to pander to them, to be in good books and in the service of whiteness. And that is the message coming through from Felix in Midrand, reflecting on the adoption of the Freedom Charter. And there's a lengthy one from Lutando Zwelidumile and Dunja, and I suppose, all right, I think we read that a few days ago. No, let me skip that. Let me go to the call by Rasta Kingston. Good morning to you, Rasta. You want to talk about the conversation we had around Kata and Kodeta and their latest deal, yeah?
Yes, good morning, Thulas, to you and your listeners. Yes, Thulas, I'm calling from Kimberley. And this issue that is permeating, that is transpiring there in Cape Town, actually could be averted. It couldn't have taken 20 years, as I heard the previous speaker speak from from Santiago saying it took them 20 years. If law enforcement can start doing their jobs to us precisely without buying faces, because if I have an operating license and I operate unlawfully, it is the association's responsibility to alert law enforcers that there is an illegal operator operating on our route, and then they have to apply the law on that person.
Yeah.
But now, if they fail to leave that person whilst we have alerted the law enforcers, then it becomes our responsibility to resolve this issue amongst ourselves. And we are not experts in that. The only problem that we can resolve issues is when we start shooting each other, killing each other. That is way, way, way antiquated. It's old-fashioned way of doing business. If we can start seeing, if law enforcers can help us, because it's also happening here all over the country, even in Kimberley. Illegal operators are just operating on your route. I can't go to Thulas and tell you, Thulas, you are illegal, man. You don't even have an operating license to operate on my route. He will tell you, who are you? This is my car. And I can't, if I stop you there, you take out a gun and you shoot me. But if I told the law enforcement and they do nothing, who's the problem? The problem is that if law enforcement can start acting on these illegal operators, we will not be able to shoot it. To shoot each other. That's our take.
No, I hear you, Rasta. So you are in the taxi industry. Just talk to me a little bit more. Is it your belief that wanting to exact justice for what you see as an injustice of someone encroaching on a route on which you are permitted to operate, is it your calculation that it's worth engaging in that kind of violence simply based on the argument that law enforcement is doing nothing about the encroachments that occur on the routes? What's the balance there between human life, the lives of the customers that you transport, and your sense of injustice that this person should not be on this route because I'm licensed to be on this route and law enforcement are doing nothing about it?
Thulas, as an operator, you become so frustrated that you can't even weigh a balance, because I'm in Santiago as I speak to you. I operate from the Northern Cape. I'm in the PEC of Santiago. We have meetings, countless meetings with law enforcers, traffic officials and police, and we always alert and tell them our problems. But they will just go out of the meeting and tell us that we're going to resolve this issue, and then they will come to the rank for 1 day, 2 hours, and then they go. But all those legal operators, when they start seeing the law enforcers, they run away. But when they leave, they come back. And all of them are armed with guns. You all know the taxi people are armed with guns. So how do I approach you in the absence of a law enforcer and stop you and say, you are operating illegally? You are going to take out your gun and shoot me.
All right. Rasta Kingston, thank you for those insights that come in from someone who operates within the taxi industry. I've got to do right by Luthando as well, Dumile and Tunja, because I thought when I read the first few lines that it's a message we had read before, but it says Luthando's style of writing that is very similar to previous messages that confused me. I hadn't read this message, and he rightly points out. So Luthando's well, Dumile and Tunja's message says, says he speak as a parolee and son of the soil, and says he speaks of the spirit of Steve Biko. The Freedom Charter promised us dignity, land, and shared wealth, but instead of decolonization, we got constitutional assimilation. The soul of our struggle, rooted in African philosophy, was buried under Roman Dutch law and capitalist structures that remain untouched. Our constitution never truly broke from colonial frameworks. It used the language of rights, but not the lifeblood of justice. So that's part of the message. It's a lengthy message from Luthando as well, Dumile and Tunja there, but weighing in on the anniversary of the Freedom Charter. Let me go to Peggy in Mpumalanga. Good morning to you, Peggy. You want to talk to me about Mamelodi Sundowns and their exit from the Club World Cup?
Like sands through the hourglass, so are the days of our lives. Having a wish that we would be in the shoes of our coaches and make them understand that when you start on fire, it doesn't matter how you start, but how you finish. Mamelodi Sundowns started very well to us. We were so optimistic that they are going to nail this team. But they had this thing that we are playing against Brazilians, and they became complacent. And I think the coach didn't look very well at Allende and Adams. Those were the weakest link of Mamelodi Sundowns. If he should only, I must applaud this guy, of which I always criticized him. this young boy who was playing for Cape Town, Ajax Cape Town. He played very well when the back player got injured. But I want to say that what was the coach supposed to do?
Mm-hmm.
He was supposed at least to encourage the players and to make sure that they're supposed to finish very well. But my heart is broken. Mamelodi Sundowns has made a statement, and a bold statement.
Absolutely.
And we're proud of them and are going to receive them very well. Thank you.
Peggy, thank you for that. That's big in Mpumalanga, and I echo the sentiment. There's really nothing to be ashamed about. I didn't watch the game with Fluminense yesterday, but I watched the spectacular performance. Well, let me not say spectacular, but, the gallant performance against Borussia Dortmund. And you got the sense that you're talking about a team that understands its position in South African football, on the African continent, and even on the world stage. They gave a really good account of themselves. And I keep saying that even Borussia Dortmund on their social media, they saluted Mamelodi Sundowns because bar one or two mistakes that can happen in a game of football, mistakes being made by an otherwise solid player. But on the day, a mistake occurs, and it turns out that's the mistake that in the end favors the other team. But overall, Sundowns just gave a good account of themselves throughout their participation in that tournament. Stand by. In the next few minutes, we'll be talking about developments around Itala Bank and the interventions of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal. That coming up in a moment.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still very heavy on Pretoria's M1 South. We had this truck that lost a load of fruit this morning at Stormful Road, resulted in a temporary full closure. It has been reopened, but only with 2 lanes, and it's a very, very big backlog of traffic all the way back through to almost Pumalani Plaza. Don't underestimate the N1. It is super heavy. Anything that acts as an alternative route coming out of Montana, Sefako Makato, across the highway to Moloto Road, the Baviansport Road, then linking you from Sefako Makato down through Deerport area, that's all heavy. Even as far as Vanderbom past Vanderbom Junction, that whole sort of area all snarled up as motorists from the Montana side head that way this morning to avoid the N1 and run into also big trouble as well. N14 is heavy again this morning on your way to Pretoria. You're going to be asked to queue up into the Brockfontein interchange. Also, if you're leaving Joburg, you'll be sitting in traffic on the M2 out towards the Benrose side, and a crash on the Mike 1 at Empire. Mike 1 North backlogging from Ormonde, the M2 from Benrose into the Crown, heavy as well. And the R21 update this morning, roadworks going north up towards Olifantsfontein. It's heavy as you pass Tembisa on your way to Pretoria, and a crash on the N12 at Atlas Road, slowing traffic coming through from Benoni. It's a double hit if you're on your way out of Durban through to Pietermaritzburg, a crash at Key Ridge, and then a breakdown before Hammersdale, taking forever to clear that breakdown this morning. It's heavy just after Shongweni is where you'll pick up that backlog out to Pietermaritzburg this morning. A breakdown on the N2 southbound after Umgena Road, so that's getting slow. Heavy pressure N2 north up towards the Komashu Highway off ramp this morning. Problems again getting off the highway. And Cape Town, the earlier crash, N1 into town at the N7 is cleared, but it's left a backlog of traffic sitting between Belleville and the Kuberg interchange. And the N2 inbound, the ramp to Borchers Quarry is closed due to flooding, so motorists sitting from Khayelitsha through that closure down to the airport exit, and then jamming up the airport approach road into the airport, trying to sneak back into Nyanga via that Borchers Quarry off ramp from the airport. And a vehicle fire on the M3 inbound at UCT, causing delays in from Bishop's Court to Newland side. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This week on FC Meets, former Moroka Swallows and Baroka dribbling wizard Sipho Moeti, affectionately known as Gobe, shares his rise from being worshipped at festive games to his inevitable rise to the Betway Premiership. He shares his story of disappointment, triumph and controversy. FC Meets, football made for community by community. Richard game. Tune into SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 the Saturday at 6 p.m. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Get to Dis-Chem for big electrical savings. The more you buy, the more you save. Enjoy incredible discounts on participating brands like Philips, Dequip, Reflections, and Russell Hobbs. Get 25% off when you buy one electrical product, 30% off when you buy 2, and buy any 3 or more and get a huge 35% off each. Don't miss out. Big electrical savings end 13 July. Only at Dis-Chem. Better health starts here.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
So, a promising pathway towards saving the embattled Itala Bank from liquidation may just have opened up following a high-level political agreement between the KwaZulu-Natal chapter of the ANC and the national government. After urgent discussions with Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana, it was confirmed that the bank will be preserved and all customer deposits fully guaranteed, bringing relief to thousands of financially vulnerable individuals and small businesses across the province. Let's bring in Mike Mabuya-Kulu, KwaZulu-Natal ANC coordinator, to give us a bit more detail on that agreement. So before we go ahead and hail it as a breakthrough, Mr. Mabuya-Kulu, that will save Itala from liquidation, it is important for us to understand the full contours of what was agreed here. So give us the details. What is this agreement with the finance minister and how exactly will it save Itala from liquidation?
Well, good morning to you, Thulasizwe, and good morning to the SFM listeners. Well, when the ANC PTT was appointed at the end of February this year, one of our first tasks in our program of action was to take a decision that we wanted to save Itala, particularly Itala Stock Limited. We were very worried that many of the depositors are people who are in the countryside, in the rural areas, the small businesses, the people in the townships, because Itala is primarily banking the unbanked. Now, one of those discussions that ensued between ourselves and the Minister of Finance directly was the mechanism of how we could save Itala. Our first major concern was the role played by the Provincial Authority, that it had taken a decision to apply for the liquidation. It is now common cause that application went to the Pietermaritzburg High Court, and the High Court decided that, look, the Provincial Authority could not continue with the liquidation part, but when they were granted the right to appeal to the SCA. That has given us even more worry, because it meant that its operation remained closed. And it is common cause that when you have a bank that takes deposits and then it has been closed for so long, the day it opens its doors, many of the people will start to have a run on that bank. So we needed to have some kind of a mechanism. Hence, the minister, by law, would have been expected to guarantee the depositors who have deposited their money up to 100,000. But in our agreement with the minister, he has now agreed to give a full guarantee for all of the depositors. And that is the first step, because that step then means that the Provincial Authority can now be able to withdraw from this action in terms of taking legal action to liquidate Itala. But secondly, then, we can move to the second phase. The second phase is where we now need to discuss a strategic plan of how to reposition Itala to the future. That would include the various options that we may consider of how to be able to reposition Itala as a future financial institution. That discussion is the next discussion that we are going to enter into. And we will be pursuing that together with our partners in the government of provincial unity, so that we are able to then have a proper agreement between the KwaZulu-Natal government of provincial unity and national treasury.
But Mr. Mabuya-Kulu, hasn't the horse already bolted in terms of the application by the Prudential Authority for the liquidation of Itala, in the sense that that can be separated from the operational seizing of accounts and things like those that was subject of a separate piece of litigation? The way I understand it, these are two streams of litigation. The one has to do with the final determination of whether or not the bank can be liquidated. So which one have you reached a breakthrough about?
Well, what we are saying to the Caesar is that, as you know, I'm saying that although the court in the Pietermaritzburg High Court granted an application refusing the liquidation, but in essence it also granted a leave to appeal to the Prudential Authority and the repayment administrator. Because remember that the payment administrator had already started the process that it would be actually repaying those depositors back. And it could only be those who would deposit their money up to 100,000. Now, what this actual agreement says is that the minister then guarantees the depositors, all of the depositors, And that now, because we have already had a decision that Itala could operate and open its operation, we are simply saying this now gives certainty. The only thing that is remaining going forward is how do we reposition Itala as a better financial institution for the future, and what sort of options that we will be actually considering. And that is the next phase that we are required then to put forward a strategic plan together with the various modalities on the table, which we are saying as the ANC, we will be doing that together with our partners in the government of provincial unity, because it will be then the provincial government leading that process where we will be making our contribution going forward.
Am I incorrect in understanding that the guarantee to depositors has been in place for quite some time? I remember reading a figure of some 2 billion rand that was said to be a guarantee for depositors, which then leads me to the other question that says, will this agreement that you say you've reached with the Minister of Finance entail the Minister of Finance instructing the Prudential Authority to withdraw from the litigation about liquidation, and as well as the Minister of Finance intervening directly in the sense of pumping money into Itala so that its perceived or, the alleged factual and legal, insolvency can be addressed?
Well, let me explain one element, Thulasizwe. The 2.1 billion was already on the table, but that 2.1 billion rand was only guaranteeing the depositors who had deposited their money up to 100,000. It did not actually provide the guarantee for all of the depositors. That is the first fundamental thing that we must actually make a distinction on. What this agreement now does, it then guarantees all of the depositors. Hence, therefore, it then removes the need for the Prudential Authority to continue with its action incomplete, because even if you had provided the 2.1 billion, but you only guaranteed a portion of the depositors, then the Prudential Authority still had to be able to deal with the issue of the remainder of the depositors. So I think that is what is clarifying it. And then because we have now provided a full guarantee, it then makes it unnecessary for the Prudential Authority to continue to exist in the space. Hence, then it allows the provincial government and National Treasury to be able then to enter into the discussions around how then to actually reposition Itala and what options do we put on the table going forward.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time. That's Mike Mabuya-Kulu, KwaZulu-Natal ANC Coordinator. Bringing us to 8 a.m., let's go straight to N. Musa with the latest news.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30754. Now that's good news.
In our top stories, foot and mouth outbreak cripples KZN's farming industry, and the G20 Sherpas meeting continues at Sun City. Good morning. Commercial and small-scale farmers in the Vryheid area in northern KwaZulu-Natal say the outbreak of foot and mouth disease is crippling their businesses and the local economy. The farmers have been forced to halt the sale of their animals due to the outbreak. The area has been cited as one of the hotspots in the province. Wesley Glutz is amongst the affected commercial farmers.
Since about 4 years ago, it's started having an effect on our prices. Feedlots, which are our main buyers, view us as high risk for them. It's definitely had a negative effect on our prices. The last 6 months or so, it's been moving closer and closer to, let's say, northern Natal or Vryheid area. So at the moment, we're on a bit of a lockdown due to the foot and mouth. It's got a huge effect on us. We can't move our cattle. Legally, we're not allowed to sell to them. And abattoirs as well. So we've got no market at this stage.
The Provincial Department of Agriculture says to date over 500,000 cattle have been vaccinated in affected areas to prevent the spread of the outbreak. Meanwhile, the mayor of the Abaqulusi municipality, Sifiso Mkwanazi, is urging all farmers to work with government to curb the spread of the outbreak.
In actual fact, it's very huge, to an extent that even some of these businesses are now failing to pay what is due to the municipality because they are not getting any business as they used to. It has got a very big negative impact, but from the goodness of their hearts, they are trying to mitigate the issue of dismissing. They try to keep their employees under the employee even during these difficult times, and we need to applaud them for that.
As the United Nations mark 80 years of existence, the UN G20 Sherpa Nelson Mufu says the G20 is making meaningful strides to ensure multilateralism remains effective and inclusive, particularly for global trade and cooperation amid rising geopolitical tensions. Today, Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Ronald Lamola, is expected to address the second day of the gathering. Mufu made these remarks at the third G20 Sherpas meeting underway at Sun City Resort in the northwest.
There is a positive momentum with regards to reinforcing multilateral cooperation at a time when it is very much needed as the UN celebrates 80 years of existence. And the G20 presidency under South Africa is contributing positively to this notion of reinforced solidarity around sustainable development and equality, because it is time to reform the global governance architecture, but also ensure that financing for development and climate action is something that benefits developing countries.
The Garden Route region of the Western Cape is working on building new charging stations for electric vehicles and upgrading ones that they've already been installed. Role players at the recent Garden Route Electric Vehicles EV seminar shared plans to expand the use of EVs in government departments, as well as installing more charging stations along the N2 highway. International and local tourists in the region are frequently requesting EVs over petrol or hybrid cars. Garden Route District Municipality Mayor Andrew Struble says they're excited to be stimulating a new sector of the local economy.
My wish and my aim is definitely that the Garden Route can be marketed as a green destination as well. We have the beautiful George Airport here, and my hope is that we can market the George Airport as a green arrival where you can hire any electrical vehicle and you can enjoy the Garden Route with mapped destinations where you can charge your vehicle, not just only at gas stations, but as I said, there's beautiful destinations we have.
And finally, the head of the CIA, John Ratcliffe, has backed President Donald Trump's views that the U.S. strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities caused severe damage. Washington has been pushing back against elite intelligence assessment, which suggested core components of Iran's nuclear program were slightly damaged. The BBC's Jay Kwan reports.
In a statement, Mr. Ratcliffe said the agency had a body of credible intelligence that indicated several Iranian nuclear facilities were destroyed and would have to be rebuilt over a course of years. The extent of the destruction has become a disputed topic. Earlier, the White House dismissed Tuesday's leaked Pentagon report, which, in a preliminary assessment of the damage, disagreed with Mr. Trump. The report said that the strikes had only set back the program by a few months and that the enrichment infrastructure remains largely intact deep underground.
Recapping the top story, commercial and small-scale farmers in the Vryheid area in northern KwaZulu-Natal say the outbreak of foot-and-mouth disease is crippling their businesses and the local economy. The farmers have been forced to halt the sale of their animals due to the outbreak. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 30754 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out.
Breaking news just in. Pinky, a 60-year-old woman, slashed 870 Rand a month off her car insurance premium. That's right. Pinky switched to Outsurance and now saves a mind-blowing 870 Rand a month on her 2020 Kia Seltos 1.6. Outsurance clients always get something out. Get a quote today and see how much Outsurance could save you on your car insurance. Call 08600 60,000 or visit outsurance.co.za. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's and information online.
It's a very good morning to you. In your SFM Sports headlines, cricket, the Proteas are looking to reset as world champions. They head to Bulawayo, and we'll also bring you the Mamelodi Sundowns coach Miguel Cardoso saying his team should return to South Africa with their heads held high. All the details just before 8:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. Still very heavy on the M1 South coming out of Pretoria down towards Storham. Full lost load of fruit this morning on the highway. Recovery of that going to take some time. 2 lanes open. Big queues from the N4 Bakwena Highway. Anything that acts as an alternative, they're heavy as well. Joburg's R21 North roadworks towards Clayville. That's a heavy queue from the Bopsfontein Road. Crash on Joburg's Mike 1 North at Empire Road. So coming through the Crown on the Mike 1's heavy. The M2 from Benrose into that a mess as well. Durban to Peterborough just got a lot worse. A crash after the M13 on ramp at Key Ridge, and then a breakdown which has been there all morning at Hammersdale. So heavy just after Shongweni. The N2 North is badly backed up from the M7 through Westwood Mall, and then in Nanda Road up towards the Komashu Highway exit. And Cape Town N1 super heavy this morning from Brackenfell right through to the Cooper get a change, and the N2 inbound sitting between the R300 and the airport exit. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
9 minutes after 8 on this Thursday, it is great to be in your company. Lots of reflection on the 70th anniversary of the Freedom Charter, and I do want to take as many of those reflections coming in from you as much as possible. So we will be making a lot of time to take your calls. I see that there's 1 or 2 messages that have been coming in the last while, but also other reflections that have to do, for instance, with the conversation around the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, saying that they've reached an agreement with the finance minister, which is about saving Itala Bank from liquidation. So that's one of those conversations that's also gained quite a bit of traction from some of those that have already sent messages in this morning. I will be taking your calls. The number to dial is 086 000 2032, 086 000 2032. I'll take your WhatsApp voice notes on 061 410 4107. Among what we will do in this hour, though, we'll reflect a little bit about the shifting sands of coalition politics in the city of Johannesburg. We had a moment yesterday where there was a bit of uncertainty about whether or not the Johannesburg mayor, Dada Morero of the ANC, was going to survive a motion of no confidence. In the end, it was not even close. He survived it by a wide margin, but not so lucky for the Action SA member who was the Speaker of Council, Nobuhle Mthembu, whose the motion of no confidence in her passed also by a wide margin. So that sort of tells you about the shifting sands within the coalition, the governing coalition politics, right? And that's what we'll reflect on in about 10-15 minutes with Dr. Helen Klute, who will weigh in on that. As I said, your call's integral part of this, and I see a lot of you already lining up. So let's waste no further time and get started with the third hour of the Thursday edition of The Morning Brief.
With the ever-changing financial landscape, it can be difficult to make sense of all the moves at times. Join me, Jimmy Moyaha, on the SAFM Market Update with MoneyWeb, Mondays to Thursdays, 6 to 7 p.m, as we break down the key market trends, top financial stories, and smart investment insights, all in one place. It's everything you need to stay financially informed and ahead of the curve.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
Let me start with 1 or 2 voice notes. I see some of them have to do with the conversation around Itala Bank. You will have heard the questions I was asking to Mike Mabuyakulu of the ANC, the coordinator of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, about what exactly the details are of how Itala will be saved from liquidation, as per what we are told is an agreement between that chapter of the ANC, the provincial chapter, and the Minister of Finance. Let's hear what this person has to say about that.
Good morning, Thulas and your team. This is Sakilin Tsubun from Gomhlabialingan. You know, Thulas, the NC in KZN should have intervened before Itala was closed because they had known that it had license issues, but they did nothing. Now they want to do the impossible. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. I do suspect that all of this will be clarified in the coming hours or the coming days. Perhaps we might hear from the finance minister a bit more detail of what this entails, because the legal process had already started towards the liquidation. But also I do suspect that the South African Reserve Bank may want to say a thing or two. They've not been given running commentary on this, but they've put out statements and fact sheets on their website that clarify what the exact position is. Let me take two reflections. Let me play this one. It has to do with the story we were reporting around the dispute around the burial of the former Zambian president, Edgar Lungu.
Good morning, Thulas and SAFM listeners. Thulas, about the late former president of Zambia, there are two things that I'm not understanding. What was the agreement between them and South Africa country? And if you say somebody must not attend your funeral, does it mean you say you don't want to be buried in your country? I'm not sure what is happening there. Thanks, Lucy in Gauteng.
So, Lucy, part of that, the South African government was going to honor the wishes of the Lungu family. So that's the one part. They were not seeking to get involved in the dispute. They were saying if the family wants to bury him in South Africa, we have no objections to that. But in terms of the change in country, from the reporting of Kenny Mapanga and others, it became clear that if the remains were to be repatriated to Zambia, the Zambian government was insisting that this was a former president, someone of national standing, part of our history. The remains were going to be received by the president, the current president, Hakainde Hichilema, and other government officials, and potentially, and the plan was to give him a state funeral. So that then became the impasse that says, he did not want this. He did not want this person involved in his funeral. And by doing that, you are going to violate his wishes. Let me take one more voice note before I come to you, Sivuyile, also on the issue of Edgar Lungu.
Good morning, Thulas and
SAF. I just played that. Let me play the right one.
Good morning, Thulas. Nico here from Midrand. On the issue of Edgar Lungu's burial, if the family wishes are that HH does not attend. He's not the only man in government. There is a deputy president, there is ministers. Why can't they allow government to bury him, but HH stay away? Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. It's all a bit complex. Let me not venture a form of speculation, because I don't know the extent to which they were rejecting the entire concept of a state funeral versus a private ceremony. I've not read up on that, so I would rather not weigh up, but I do suspect you may find a bit more detail there. Therein may lie the answer. Whether are they just rejecting the president, or are they rejecting the whole concept of him being afforded a state funeral? But I don't want to venture an opinion without having read up on it. Let's speak to Sivuyile in Potchefstroom. Good morning. Also on the same issue of the late Zambian president, Edgar Lungu, former president.
Good morning, Mr. Simelane. How are you this morning?
Very well. How are you? Please go ahead.
I'm fine, thanks. I just want to weigh in on two issues here. Of course, number one will be that one of Zambia, the former president of the Zambian government. I just wanted to know from your analysts what they actually generated. The question might arise: did the former president have the will and testament? Perhaps it's not the wish of the person who is dead.
Yeah.
To at least honor his will in terms of where must he be buried and so on.
Yeah.
So I just wanted clarity on that one.
Yeah, no, it's an important question that you are asking. I think I broached it with Kenny Mapanga earlier on, SABC News reporter, that this is an interesting question. To what extent do you honor this person's wishes, and to what extent do you serve the national interest? You said you wanted to add something else. Please go ahead with that.
Yes, because also on the same issue of Zambia, I'm aware that former president might be buried at least on the 4th of August. And there is a chance that the legal case might also take, in effect, that the Supreme Court of Law might also take place also it might also reach the apex court.
Yeah.
Would that also not maybe at least affect the burial of the
we are in murky terrain. A lot of these questions we can't really answer at the moment. But very quickly, you wanted to raise one more issue.
Yes, the last two that I wanted to highlight.
Please do one if you don't mind. Please do one if you don't mind, so I can take other calls.
Okay, no, it's fine. So this one of the DRC deployment, I think it's after the last batch of the soldiers from DRC, it's important that the South African government and the GNU, they establish Judicial Commission of Inquiry to see if maybe the deployment of our soldiers, was it a success or was it a failure? So I think it's important that this government establish a commission of inquiry to establish whether the deployment of our soldiers was it a success or was it a failure.
All right. Sivuile, thank you for that. That's Sivuile there in Potchefstroom. Let me quickly move on. Mike in Newlands, I see your call. I'll come to you in a moment. But let me quickly take Pat in Katlehong because he's also on the same theme of Edgar Lungu. Good morning to you.
Morning, how are you? Chula?
Very well. Please go ahead.
Thulasizwe, my point is that at some stage during a dispute, one should really have a bigger picture. I think the state should relent and give Mr. Edgar Lungu, that is the biggest honor is for him to rest in peace. Whatever the dispute, whatever the family, whatever the issues, at the end of the day, it has to do with his family. Anyway, you just say, no, fine, okay, fine. We will withdraw our application and let his spirit rest in peace. That is when we have a bigger picture. Anyway, I think that's what is up to the Zambian state.
Yeah. Hey, Pat, it's tough, man. I don't know. Thank you for that. That's Pat in Katlehong. I think that's my position. I keep wishing them that they find one another and there's an amicable resolution because whatever the differences, this is now becoming an ugly spectacle. And I have said before that I covered the funeral and the mourning period around the late former Zambian president, Levi Mwanawasa, and the sheer dignity and the outpouring of love across the political divide in that country, and you juxtapose with what's happening now. It's something that I think, if they can, they should try and find a resolution that doesn't prolong this dispute. Mike in Newlands, good morning. You want to talk to me about the Freedom Charter?
I do. Good morning. When I first posted my first vote for the ANC, I always thought the Freedom Charter was a document that we could aspire to, and so sad now because every time I hear about the Freedom Charter, I can never get Steve Biko out of my head because he said at one stage very early on in our when South Africa was liberated, he said he fears that the liberators might become elitist and drive around in fancy Mercedes-Benzes, live in mansions and acquire riches.
Sadly, unfortunately, Mike? Was that not Chris?
Sorry, Chris.
Yeah. Yes.
Sorry, Chris Hani, you're quite right. Thank you, Thulasizwe.
Sure.
Chris Hani, yeah. And we now have that. There's a movie coming out on Netflix about Malusi Gigaba, which he's currently trying to have banned because it reflects essentially just that and where the ANC is today. And I just feel that with the Freedom Charter, we've failed on every front. It's in tatters. We implemented cadre deployment, which mean only politically connected black people could start benefiting from the wealth in the country with no consequences to that. We've got corruption at every level, from our president through the Union Bill, the SANDF, the arms deal. The Zondo Commission highlighted a whole lot of people that have done bad things. None of them have ever been prosecuted, and many of them sit in Parliament in high office. Mike. So I'm just saying that really, Thulasizwe, yes, we should try and enforce it, and the land is important, but now we can't do that by doing land grabs and expropriation without compensation, because that is why our building industry is not taking off, because we're not having investment into our country, and we can't have, EE, which is now a new form of apartheid, telling us what color people must have. So it really is in tatters, and we need to really, this is maybe an opportunity to rethink it. Thank you.
Mike, you and I have debated all these other issues you raise extensively, and I don't want to prosecute that debate once again, but two things strike me. You're saying that you voted for the ANC.
I did.
Was it the first democratic election?
Yes, I did. I actually met Nelson Mandela personally, and my wife met him twice, and I very proudly voted ANC. There was no question in my mind about that.
Lastly, and you quoted Chris Hani this morning.
Another one of my heroes.
Mike in Newlands there. I do need to take a break, but I see a lot of your calls. So how do we navigate this? All right, let me come back. Let me take a break and then come back and try and fit in one or two more of your calls before we get to Zykan.
A stage awaits. Not for applause, but for possibility. For over 40 years, Standard Bank has championed the arts. And at the National Arts Festival, we don't just watch talent rise, we help grow it. Through our Standard Bank Young Artist Winners, raw voices find power, unseen stories take the spotlight, and what begins as a dream grows into a legacy. Join us in Makanda for the festival. Standard Bank, proud lead sponsor of B20 South Africa, an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
The citizens and the believers are in a high-level clash of emotions. Drama meets tension. The fight for 3 points is real. This is the PSL Promotional Playoffs. Catch the thrilling encounter between Cape Town City and Cashrick Stars this Monday, 30 June at 2:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and SABC2. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195 and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
This week on FC Meets, former Moroka Swallows and Baroka dribbling wizard Sipho Moeti, affectionately known as Gobe, shares his rise from being worshipped at festive games to his inevitable rise to the Betway Premiership. He shares his story of disappointment, triumph and controversy. FC Meets, football made for community by community. Richard game. Tune into SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 the Saturday at 6 p.m. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
All right, let me fit in two quick calls before we get to the sport update with Zykan. Maxwell in Velcom. Good morning.
Morning, Tulas. I'm just going to be quick.
Sure.
Tulas, how cruel can a man be? Hichilema punished Lungu when he was alive. He's now punishing him even more when he's dead.
Sure.
Why can't he afford him his wish and allow him to be buried in line with his wishes that Hichilema should not be there? Why is he continuing to punish this man? That's selfish, man.
Yeah,
that's selfish.
That's an interesting way of looking at it, Maxwell, because
that's very painful.
That is the easier way out of this dispute, right? For the government to back down and say, we'll honor.
They must just back down and allow the man to rest in peace.
All right.
They denied him dignity as a former president when he was alive. Even if you can read about the story when he left there and came here, he was incognito. He was no one. Why should he be someone when they're supposed to be in the limelight?
Gotcha.
They must allow him to rest in peace.
All right, Maxwell, thank you for that. That's an interesting take on that issue. Let me take Lefuko in the Northwest, also on the same issue. Good morning to you. Please go ahead.
Morning, Tulas. Question is, was he still benefiting, getting the presidential benefits from Zambia after he left? And then secondly, how does our...
We then lost Lefuko just like that. Lefuko, you were raising those questions that, about the status of the late former president before he passed on. I speak under correction, and if I'm incorrect, I'll gladly come back and acknowledge it. But I think as far as his diplomatic passport, for example, under correction, I think I remember reading somewhere or hearing in one bulletin that had been revoked by the time he passed on. So I suppose, without talking to the other benefits, I suppose that tells you a little bit about the kind of relationship that existed between the former president and the current administration led by Hakainde Hichilema. But, as I say, all of that is something that I want, put my head on the block. But I do seem to recall fuzzily that I read somewhere or heard in one bulletin that was the situation. We'll take more of your calls a bit later on.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning to you. So the Proteas are headed to Bulawayo in Zimbabwe, and they're looking for some kind of a reset.
Yep, they are rebuilding, they are rebranding. I think
Yeah.
they've got the whole team of the next generation
Nice.
from holding that mace, they'll be hanging out in Matabele land.
Nice.
It's going to be nice, yeah, especially after they will go into Zimbabwe as the World Test Champions. All-rounder Vian Mulder says the emotional high of lifting the mace must now make way for focus. Key players like Kagiso Rabada, Ada Markram, as well as our captain Temba Bavuma, they've been rested. Youngsters like Deval Brevis and Kwena Mapaka will get their shot. And it's a 2-test series against Zimbabwe, and that's starting on Saturday. Let's go to soccer. Mamelodi Sundowns coach Miguel Cardoso revealing plans to trim the playing personnel to a manageable size in the coming weeks. The Brazilians were eliminated from the FIFA Club World Cup following a goalless draw against Fluminense, who progressed to the round of 16 along with Group F leaders Borussia Dortmund. Now, Cardoso acknowledging the fact that a few of his key players, amongst them Lucas Ribeiro, might have caught the eye of top-class rivals in Europe, and says he's happy to see them go and flourish.
I don't have any problems to accept losing players, because I think that my job has to do with that, providing opportunities for the other ones to become better. Despite I know that I work in a club that doesn't like to sell players because we like to have a lot of stability, and I also like stability. So that's what we're going to go for.
Now, Manchester City must be prepared to suffer in the challenging heat of Orlando during their crunch Club World Cup match against Juventus. This, according to manager Pep Guardiola. The temperature at Camping World Stadium is expected to rise to 33 degrees Celsius for the game.
But the hot is it's obviously, so we cannot change it, right? I think all the teams have to handle it, so we have to be ready to suffer. But it's fine. Hopefully we can do a good game and the people can come. Only I can advise to the people, bring a lot of water, hats, towels in the necks. So, because I think will be tough.
Now, Zambia's captain Barbara Banda insists their opening game against Morocco in the Women's Africa Cup of Nations won't be a walk in the park. The Copper Queens' last game against the Atlas Lions ended in a win for them and helped them qualify for the Olympics. The 25-year-old and her teammates, Rachel Konananji, are the most expensive players in the world. And Banda says she hopes this tournament will expose more African players to international clubs.
It gives more opportunity to more Africans to get exposed and play global football. They're getting exposed, so it's very important. And to the young generation that are coming up, a lot of people are looking up to us. So the way we are doing things right now, it's gonna change everything for us.
And finally, we have rugby. The Barbarians' assistant coach Sam Whitelock expects Stormers lock Ruben van Heerden to make his mark against the Springboks at Cape Town Stadium. Van Heerden is coming out of a standout season in the URC, is expected to start in the second row for the Barbars alongside another South African, David Ribbons, who has played Test rugby for England.
I don't know why you're chuckling. The guilty are afraid.
What?
You're afraid that I'll make another accusation. Relax, okay? There are no more accusations.
I know.
What there is a question from Lucanyo in Gqeberha, who is asking you, hi Zai, are the Proteas going to Zim by bus or by plane? That's what I wanted to chime in before you started thinking I'm going to. So, do you have an answer for Lucanyo?
I'm sure they're jet setting their way.
Yeah, I
that's
can only
for
imagine.
sure.
Yeah.
There's no 13-hour drive for them. That's not going to happen. And what's going to happen is more sport on SFM around 12:30. I'm Zai Khan.
Good morning, I'm Anne Musa. In the headlines, human rights lawyer advocate Simba Shitando says the High Court in Pretoria is likely to rule in favour of Zambia's former president Edgar Lungu's family. This after the court granted an interdict halting the burial of Lungu yesterday. Commercial and small-scale farmers in the Vryheid area in northern KwaZulu-Natal say the outbreak of foot-and-mouth disease is crippling their businesses and the local economy. The farmers have been forced to halt the sale of their animals due to the outbreak. And U.S. President Donald Trump has hailed a commitment from NATO allies to increase defense and security spending to 5% of their GDP as a big win for Washington. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still very heavy around the Pretoria northern areas this morning. The root cause is largely the crash on the one south at Storenville, still being recovered. Lanes have been reopened, some lanes open, but not all of them. So big backlogs back through the Montana exit. Sefako Makato out of Montana across the highway to Moloto Road's heavy. A lot of traffic diverting out through from Montana towards the Vanderboom area. So routes like Sefako Makato, Lavender, Steve Biko, Mayville, Paul Kruger, it's all very heavily backed up. There is a crash there as well on the Paul Kruger run there at Ruckle de Beer. So a lot of congestion either diverting away from the Montana N1 situation or running into that separate crash scene. R21 towards Pretoria, backlogging up towards the roadworks at Clayville. Crash at Galuli's, N12 and R24 reaches slow. Crash on the Mike 1 South coming off the N1 at Buccleuch down to Marlborough Drive. So the whole sort of Buccleuch interchange system's all snarled up as a result of that. M2 out of central Joburg to Benrose, you're going to be asked to queue. M2 towards Crown stays heavy as well. Situation out of Durban through towards Hammersdale via Keyridge and Cliffdale, all improving. The crash and the broken down vehicle have finally been cleared away. Cape Town, major backlog on the R44, Somerset West through to Stellenbosch. The lights are down halfway through at Annandale Road, and that's a really big queue. And just keep this in mind, if you come into Cape Town, you want to off-ramp at Nyanga, you can't do that. The Borchers Quarry off-ramp is closed from the N2 inbound because of flooding, so motorists having to sit on the N2 down to the airport exit and then take the airport approach road where you can hook into Borchers Quarry. So there's a lot of congestion in that part of town. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
One more update from Dowling before we go. Dowling, let's start with the forecast for the economy, the South African economy coming through from Nedbank. You are saying that is also being revised downward.
That's right, Sula. So the lender is slashing its growth forecast for the country to 1%, and this is from a forecast of 1.4% that was released in February. Nedbank says the move is due to structural obstacles and sluggish fixed investment. The bank's prediction follows weak first quarter data, which showed a marginal 0.1% expansion compared to the fourth quarter of 2024. While the forecast is lower, the group expects consumer demand to drive modest growth due to low inflation and lower interest rates. On the other hand, fixed investment remains downbeat due to fragile business confidence and policy uncertainty, while slow structural reforms continue to hinder growth. In response to these challenges, Nedbank expects the Reserve Bank to cut rates yet again by 25 basis points in its July meeting, which would bring the repo rate to 7% and the prime lending rate used by commercial banks down to 10.5%. The bank also expects inflation to average at 3.4% this year and says this would allow for further monetary easing, but it does note that the global environment continues to remain uncertain.
I'm out of words to lament the anemic economic growth. I mean, it feels a bit like a cycle in Dowling, that at the start of the year, there's a glimmer of hope and some promise, but as the quarters unfold, you start seeing all these revisions downward. So, I don't know what to say.
You start noticing it in the things in data like mining and which has literally been downbeat the whole year. Sure. So sometimes you do ask yourself why we are so optimistic when we do actually see production really down in these sectors.
And that's the thing. Even this 1.4% prediction, as modest as it is, I actually thought it was a bit ambitious given our history and background. Talk to me about take-home pay, the take-home pay index. That's also on the decline.
That's right, Sulas. And according to BankServe Africa Take-Home Pay Index, the average nominal take-home pay dropped to 17,296, and this is a decline of 1.3% from April's 17,532 rands. This is the third straight month salaries have moderated, but the May 2025 figure remains higher than the 15,903 rands recorded in May 2024. Independent economist Elise Kruger says, or rather cited multiple global shocks and local challenges which have led to low confidence levels and a pause in investment decisions, including Trump's trade policies, geopolitical issues, and slow local reforms. Kruger says this could negatively impact employment and earnings prospects in the coming months. BankServe also said households will likely be under further pressure, two risks being on the upside when it comes to inflation. The firm has revised its forecast for consumer prices upwards due to the recent spike in international oil prices, potentially reaching 5% by year end and averaging 3.6% for 2025. Now, this could impact the purchasing power of salary earners and make further monetary loosening unlikely in the near future. And it's also just interesting to see both outlooks when it comes to inflation and monetary policy from both Nedbank and BankServe. While Nedbank expects consumer demand or household strength to fuel economic growth, we are seeing those international oil prices, which could come into play when fuel prices increase, and that of course playing into inflation and just weighing on consumer purchasing power. But I guess it will unfold when those increases, or if those increases come through.
Yeah. Having said everything we've said this morning, Dowling, what kind of a day can we expect on this Thursday?
Local markets are in for a mixed day to last following global peers. In terms of company news, there's updates from Property Counters, Growth Point, and Hyprop. Then over in the currency scene, the rand pretty stable at 17.71 to the dollar. In Wall Street, all eyes are on the US GDP print for insight on how the economy performed in the first quarter, and this is the final print for the period. Ahead of that release, futures are in positive territory. Lastly, in Asia, stocks are on track to close the day mixed. The Japanese Nikkei, however, powering through, touching a 4-month high today.
Dowling, thank you for that. That's Dowling Lechela there. She's kept you updated on business, the economy, as well as the markets throughout the morning here on The Morning Brief.
It's a massive night of boxing this Friday in Thohoyandou at the Koroni Hotel and Casino. Current WBF Intercontinental Champion Akani Sambu from Malamulele trades punches with KZN's tough challenger Sabelo Tebekulu, while Mzansi's reigning queen Nosiakazu Dube defends a throne against Loveness Koka from Malawi. Limpopo's Kumulani Stone Fist Nechamuchenzi clashes with the rebel Musitihwe from Botswana. Plus many more bouts. Who will survive? This is the Survival of the Fittest International Boxing Tournament. Catch the action this Friday, 27 June at 6 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Then on SABC 2 at 10:30 p.m. Proudly brought to you by Mama Rocks Boxing Promotions and SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
We love rating things, our phones, our cars, but our health? Your health lets you do what you love with the people you love. So who are you staying healthy for, and how can you improve your health? Choose Dis-Chem Life, the life cover that helps you live a healthier, more rewarding, longer life with regular health checks. Visit dischemlife.co.za now. Dis-Chem Life. Choose a better partner for life. Dis-Chem Life is an authorized FSP 50594, underwritten by Guardrisk Life, a licensed life insurer, FSP 76. T's and C's apply.
Are you looking for the best savings on spectacles? At Specsavers, enjoy 1,500 Rand off when you get tested at South Africa's trusted and most established optical group. Get 1,500 Rand off all frames in store, or use your 1,500 Rand off on our leading lens enhancements, such as drive light lenses that reduce artificial glare whilst driving. Book online or call your nearest store today. Affordable eye care, Specsavers. T's and C's apply.
The citizens and the believers are in a high-level clash of emotions. Drama meets tension. The fight for 3 points is real. This is the PSL Promotional Playoffs. Catch the thrilling encounter between Cape Town City and Cashrick Stars this Monday, 30 June at 2:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and SABC2. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
This is Thulasizwe Simelane on the Morning Brief.
Let's turn our attention to this story now. The country's employment landscape remaining under pressure as muted economic growth continues to hinder job creation. According to the latest figures from Stats SA, the first quarter of 2025 saw a significant decline in employment, with 74,000 jobs lost compared to the final quarter of 2024. This troubling trend reflects deeper structural issues in our economy, as we are often told, the economy is currently growing at under 1%. Let's speak to Siba Nobandla, who is content creator at Youth Capital. Good morning to you, and thank you for your time this morning, Siba. Just from reading of the data, what's your best understanding of what happened here? 74,000 jobs lesser than the last quarter of 2024. What are the factors at play?
When we look at these numbers, right? Factors like what does it take for young people to access these jobs, social planning, also the economic growth, as you mentioned, right? We are not, as Africa, we are not creating enough jobs to absorb the amount of people that are entering the labor force, let alone the people that are currently existing within the labor force, right? Over the last 10 years, StatSA also released that our youth unemployment rate has increased by over 10% over the last 10 years. So there's a lot of factors in there, including economic growth, including people's access to the right jobs, including whether or not the economy is right for people to actually own businesses and create, employment opportunities as well, because you see a lot of young people as well, those who want to pursue and build the economy and want to create jobs, also have a difficult time doing so because of lack of access to the right skills or lack of access to the right opportunities, with most first-time business owners failing within the first year. So there's a multitude of reasons, but I'll stop right there at these two that I've listed.
And the picture is compounded when we talk about the 95,000 year-on-year job losses, that is from March 2024 to March 2025. What to you then needs to be said further about the kind of interventions that are needed to start turning this picture around?
So as I said, we have a multitude of problems, right? And one of them is the fact that even when there is job creation, it's concentrated to the metros, right? It's concentrated to Johannesburg, it's concentrated to Cape Town, it's concentrated to these big cities where, yes, a lot of people live, but not the majority of South Africans. A lot of South Africans are living in townships, a lot of South Africans are living in rural areas, and a lot of these places are quote-unquote called economic dead zones, where there are people living there, but there's no economic activity. There's no way of pushing economic activity, right? Take, for example, a town like Port, where the economy is held together by the university, and a lot of students come in, graduate, etc., and expect jobs, but then there is a lack of absorption of graduates within these metros. So one of the solutions which we often punt for is for government to boost the interventions that they currently have to help young people transition from skills and education into points of working, like the Basic Education Employment Initiative, etc. These are things that the government has implemented over the last 5 years. However, each and every year they boast about the effectiveness of these initiatives, but then do not extend these initiatives to grow and evolve with the ever so growing labor force.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time and your insights. That's Siba Nobandla, who is content creator at Youth Capital.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
All right, I wanted to take one or two voice notes. Earlier on, I was talking about the diplomatic passport of the late former Zambian president, and I was saying that I'm not really sure. I seem to recall that there was that situation that he had lost his diplomatic passport. Someone has an answer for you. Maweliso from Boksburg says, former President Lungu lost all his retirement benefits when he returned to active politics. He was made aware of this. He forfeited diplomatic passport and medical insurance and state funeral, among other things. So that message coming through from Maweliso there in Boksburg. And then someone else, Vusi Lushaba in Durban, says, according to this article that they shared from SABC News, it would seem that former President Lungu had been stripped of all presidential benefits. So just more insights into that. But let me play one or two voice notes that have come through this morning. One or two of you reflecting on, today being the 70th anniversary of the Freedom Charter. Let me take those.
Regarding the anniversary of the Freedom Charter, what has that so-called freedom brought us? Rampant crime, rampant fraud and corruption, incompetent government, failing infrastructure, inept government officials. We've got nothing to celebrate. Anonymous KZN.
Anonymous, I hear you and I appreciate the sentiment, and I think you'll find a lot of people who agree with it. Let me just add, though, what that freedom has brought us is the power to change exactly that situation. Have we exercised it? Are we ready to exercise it? Let me leave it there.
Regarding
the
anniversary.
I just played that. All right, okay. I don't know what's going on with me. Let me play this one. It's too early, man, Let's play this one.
Grant again from the Free State. I'm just listening to this chap having the talk about the Freedom Charter and the democracy, how it should have been applied and was applied. Well, actually, it sounds like nothing's worked. The whole democracy has gone backwards. Shame. Anyhow, good luck for the future.
I wouldn't say nothing's worked. If you read the Freedom Charter, undertake the exercise of take the Freedom Charter, put it on the one side, open it up on your device or something, and then take the Constitution of the Republic. And then
grant again.
And that's not supposed to happen. And do that juxtaposition of understanding the phrases and the clauses and the provisions of the Freedom Charter, sometimes refined, but they find expression in the constitution of the country, which I don't know if you'll find anyone who will say our constitution has not held. Has it led to material conditions on the ground changing significantly enough? Is the conversation we are having. But we simply can't say nothing has worked that was espoused in the Freedom Charter. That would simply not be true. We do have the kind of democracy that was envisioned by those who were at Clipdown 70 years ago. Has it delivered the equal sharing of the wealth of the country, employment, the doors of, I don't know, I can't remember the exact phraseology around employment, for example, but have we lived up to that? That is the conversation. In fact, it says there shall be work and security. Interesting ones. Work and security. Security. Do we have that at the moment is what the conversation is. But the rest of it, I think just do that exercise and you will find a lot of it is actually espoused in our constitution.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still very heavy backlogs across the Pretoria North region this morning. It all stemmed from the truck crash that we've been reporting as the top story. A truck overturning, losing a load of fruit. M1 South at Storham. Full lanes are still closed. Some lanes are closed for recovery. Some are open. But it's a heavy backlog beyond the Montana exit. Sefako Makato out of Montana. Across the highway to Moloto Road, super heavy. And a lot of traffic ending up diverting from Montana to Vanderboom. So routes like Sefako Makato, Lavender, Steve Biko, Paul Kruger, Mayville section of Mansfield Avenue, all very heavily backed up in that Vanderboom region. Joburg, breakdown on the N3 North at Modderfontein Road. Delays getting up through Galuli's. Crash at Galuli's, N12 and R24. It's coming in from the east to heavy. And a lot of pressure still at this hour getting through Crown Interchange, M2, towards the Mike 1 and the Mike 1 from Boyson's up through Empire. Collision scene between Kloof and Hillcrest on the M13 near Maytime stores. Earlier problems, Key Ridge and Cliffdale are being cleared, but that traffic on the way to Pietermaritzburg towards Cliffdale is just starting to slow up again this morning. Cape Town, N2 inbound from the R300 towards the airport's heavy. There's the closure of Borchers Quarry off-ramp, so motorists are staying on the highway and then diverting into the airport approach road full of traffic, and then sort of coming back down Borchers Quarry on a sort of long loop around there. The other issue is just a very busy N1 today into town. It's backing up still from Planacliff Hill all the way through to the city centre, and still raining across Cape Town for much of this morning and into the afternoon. Chapman's Peak Drive staying closed due to those weather conditions as well. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
What if you open your night to culture? Try new things and make space for new voices, new stories, and new perspectives. Open up your Saturday night with world-class entertainment, reality TV, and drama from 6:30 to 9:30 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
Winter in Nelson Mandela Bay is for getting out and not staying in. Get outdoors on a green flag hiking trail or go for a game drive at one of 15 private reserves right at our doorstep. Hit the beach or get on board with a whale watching cruise. Explore the historical heart of our city or come vibe with the locals on a township tour. There's so much to discover. Find Nelson Mandela Bay, South Africa on Facebook or visit nmbt.co.za. Nelson Mandela Bay, your winter and our summer destination.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
Let me take two quick reflections on the performance of Mamelodi Sundowns at the FIFA Club World Cup.
Good morning, showing us for Chile Centurion. I just want to say a heads up to Mamelodi Sundowns. Even though we didn't go through to the next round, I think a lot of people didn't think we would do as well as we did. The boys can hold their heads up higher. I think they proved themselves on a very difficult world stage. Thanks for a great show.
Yeah, good morning, Tulas. I think that's why Begi is in Mpumalanga and Cardoso is in the US coaching Sundowns, because anybody that watches football would know that Allende was controlling everything yesterday there. Adams came in, stabilized things. Of course, we wanted to finish on a high, but the guys were defending. You've got a Brazilian team that is defending for their lives. What more do you want? It's not that because Sundowns wants to win, the other teams wants to give it away as well.
Yeah. All right, let me move on to the calls. Let me start with Solomon in KZN. Good morning to you, Solomon. You want to reflect on what the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal is saying about Itala Bank?
From where I'm standing, the initiative must be welcomed and be applauded. You would remember that Itala had a board, which is an accounting authority, and which Itala collapsed under its supervision. And the danger is that the Prudential Authority, as you have said, was not giving the running commentary, and it allows people to create different kinds of narratives, which are not accurate. But however, the significance of Itala in terms of providing services to the rural people across KwaZulu-Natal is important, and it does require such initiatives to revive and resuscitate Itala so that our own people can begin to access their savings and can begin to serve. But there is this license question which should be resolved as an ongoing matter. But Itala must come back and provide the services. Yes, people are saying all kind of things. You do, you don't, you are damned. But this is an initiative is going to break the stalemate that has been there around Itala.
Let's hope so, Solomon. And as I say, I would want to hear a bit more from the Reserve Bank, what their understanding is in terms of the processes going forward. But very quickly, Solomon, what I don't understand, in all this time when it was said that Itala was operating on the basis of exemptions on the provision that they would eventually acquire a banking license. Was there no one in this entire universe of people that appreciate the importance of Itala that was going to step up and take up the mantle that says, actually, I'm going to see this over the line. This institution is finally going to get this license. I don't understand that part.
Yeah, I think there is a lapse of vigilance. We can't leave scot-free the board and government as well, because as you say, Prudential Authority is very quiet. We do not know what exactly are the requirements for Reserve Bank to provide Itala with a license. Whether our balance sheet matters and its manner in which assets are managed, we do not know. We need to hear them, because as long as they are quiet, we do not know whether it was ill motives that led them to cancel Itala or what. But Itala need to manage its affairs better.
All right, thank you for that, Solomon. That's Solomon in KZN. Let me go to Miles in Nigel. Good morning to you, Miles. You want to talk about the Constitution?
Thulasizwe Simelane, thank you very much for taking my call. One, I wonder whether South Africans know that a document which was entitled Africa for the Africans, that was guiding the native and the Pan-Africanist struggle many years ago during the heydays of the Robert Sobukwe's and the Nelson Mandela's, that document was given over to the Zionists to convert it into a freedom cheetah, they call it, you know. And the person who wrote about this, one morning we've heard that she mysteriously died in a house in Parktown. And the Freedom Charter is also now spiced within the Constitution. And I don't know whether South Africans know that there is a document called the Victims' Rights Charter that was completed and finalized in 2005. And that Victims' Rights Charter is a hidden document that should also have been spiced within the constitution of our country, so that the victims of crime and criminals also have their rights constitutionalized. That is the irony, that is the betrayal, and that is the cowardice of lawmakers, politicians, and South Africans who, in fact, keep us in the dark all the time.
Miles, thank you for that. That's Miles and Nigel. Let me move on swiftly and take Richard as my last caller for the morning. Please go ahead, Richard, short and sharp on Edgar Lungu.
Thank you, Tulas. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Please go ahead.
Yes, Tulas, like other, I think, his voice notes who mentioned about Edgar Lungu losing his benefits. That is correct according to the Zambian constitution. The time Edgar Lungu went into active politics, he lost all the benefits. Yeah. So where are we now? Is that Edgar Lungu, there is a big scandal that the family are hiding actually, where Edgar Lungu, you see, he used a Zimbabwean diplomatic passport, which was given by
I saw that story, yeah.
Yes, that is very true. So there is a diplomatic role here, and I'm happy that the South African government have acted prudently, not to find themselves into all this saga. You see, the thing is that there is a role now between Zimbabwe and Zambia. How did Edgar Lungu get a diplomatic passport as a former president? You see, so he entered into that hospital in a Zimbabwean name. So that was very difficult for them now to change to say, no, this is Edgar Lungu. So they negotiated with the South African government that they bury Edgar Lungu here. So that is the whole scandal here. It's not about H8, I'm telling you. It has everything to do about the scandal that they made.
Richard, thank you. Let's leave it there for this morning. That's Richard in the Eastern Cape. And that's how we come to the end of today's edition of the Morning Brief. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your rigorous and vigorous participation and engagement. The Talking Point with Kathy Mutlatlana is up next after the news. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane, and you've been briefed.
In our top stories, analysis on dispute over former Zambian president's funeral and foot and mouth outbreak cripples KZN's farming industry. Good morning. Human rights lawyer advocate Simba Shitandu says the High Court in Pretoria is likely to rule in favour of Zambia's former president Edgar Lungu's family. This after the court granted an interdict halting the burial of Lungu yesterday. The Zambian government wants a state funeral in Zambia for Lungu. However, his family has refused because of his political feud with the current Zambian president Hakainde Hichilema. The Deputy Judge President Aubrey Ludwaba said parties had agreed after consultations that Lungu would not be buried until the case is heard on the 4th of August. Advocate Shitandu says South African law favours the family.
The South African court is bound by South African law, and this is something that's probably very difficult for the Zambian government to hear, is that the South African law is on the side of the family. The family have got a right to bury their loved one in a country that they wish to bury their loved one. It would be a very different situation or circumstance if the South African government said that they do not want former President Lungu to be buried in South Africa. It would be a very different situation.
Commercial and small-scale farmers in the Vryheid area in northern KwaZulu-Natal say the outbreak of foot and mouth disease is crippling their businesses and the